Chapter 456. I swear that I will not allow anything to exist that I cannot cut through. This sword can cut through everything on earth. It is an invincible blade. As the words left Tony's mouth like a proclamation, a vast power that caused the air to tremble rose from Tony's body. It was like a strong light that made Tony look like a god. Under such circumstances, Tony's sword-wielding hand began to change. Kacha-kacha. Amidst the sound of ice, Tony's arm turned silver. It was the purest color of steel. Like the arm of an exquisite sculpture, Tony gripped the sword tightly with his silver hand, causing the sword to shine with a silver light. At that moment, Noah clearly felt it. He could feel the terrifying aura released from Tony's sword that was obviously a mass-produced weapon. It made Noah's heart palpitate. I can't block it. That sword can't block it. No. It should be said that if he chose to block the sword, then Noah was likely to be in danger. Without hesitation, Noah mobilized all the mana in his body. Amidst the vibrations in the space, terrifying mana gushed out of Noah's body like a tidal wave, turning into a white light that illuminated every corner of the place. The brilliant white light was all gathered on the night sword in Noah's hand, making the pitch-black night sword completely turn into a dazzling pure white in an instant, blooming with dazzling light. Whoa, what kind of curse is this? Tony was surprised for the first time. You're obviously not my kind, but you actually have such a strong curse power. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't feel a strange aura from your body, I would have suspected that you're my kind. You've been talking about same kind since the beginning. If you're referring to the issue of race, then I'm sorry. I'm just an ordinary human, not a monster like you who suddenly jumped out. Noah raised the knight's sword in his hand. His gaze was unprecedentedly solemn. Looks like this move should be able to determine the victor between us. Let me see what kind of power this so-called authority you speak of is. You don't know? Tony was startled at first, but then the corner of his mouth rose. If that's the case, then you'd better watch carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying power that could rival a storm surged out with Tony at the center, sweeping out in all directions. It was mana. But in Tony's words, it was called curse in this world. Sensing the terrifyingly massive mana, Noah's heart was filled with astonishment. The mana rising from Tony's body was no weaker than Noah's. This was the first time Noah met someone who could match him in terms of mana. Are there really such terrifying people everywhere in this world? Are there so many of them that I've just arrived in this world? Noah gripped his sword tightly and took a deep breath. The magic power rising from his body became even more violent, and like Tony, it swept out like a storm. Tony's blood boiled as he gazed at the storm of mana around Noah's body that couldn't be affected by his own power. Then here I come. Tony gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and raised it above his head. His eyes were as bright and scorching as the sun as he stared at Noah with intense battle intent and arrogance. He suddenly smiled. In the next moment, Tony swung the sword down heavily. Clang! When Tony swung his night sword, which was wrapped in terrifying magic power, an invisible slash suddenly appeared and cut through the air. With a sharp sword hum, it flashed past like a half-moon shadow and fell on Noah. Whong! Wherever the invisible slash passed, the space violently trembled, as if it could collapse at any time, and violently fluctuated. Noah's sense of crisis exploded. Almost instinctively, Noah used all of his magic power to cast Crush to cover the knight's sword, and raised it horizontally in front of him. With the full support of the superior grade destruction spell Crush, even if Hades released an attack with all his strength, when it landed on Noah's knight's sword, it would explode in an instant, shattering without a trace. However, it was under such circumstances that Noah could not believe what happened. Clang! A slash that could not be seen with the naked eye cut through the air and landed on Noah's sword that was dyed pure white by the brilliant white light. Kacha! With a crisp breaking sound, the invisible slash cut through the brilliant white light covering the knight's sword. Then it cut through the knight's sword, revealing its original black luster. Pa! From the middle of the sword that was born from Noah's soul, it was cut in half without any resistance. Then, without losing any momentum, the slash went through the broken knight's sword, and landed on Noah's body amidst the vibrations in the air. Magician Noah, whose pupils had shrunk to the size of a needle tip, let out a low bellow, releasing the other weapon in his soul. Bang! In the surging blue flames, the power called Magician released the other weapon in Noah's soul. When the blue flames dissipated, a thick black shield was already standing in front of Noah. Clang! The untraceable slash landed on the pitch-black heavy shield that the magician had transformed into, stirring up a violent gust of wind and blazing red sparks, causing the deafening sound of the collision to resound through the sky. However, this scene did not last long. Kacha! With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the pitch-black heavy shield. Bang! Immediately after, the pitch-black heavy shield that the magician had transformed into was also cut in half. With a muffled explosion, the shield shattered into pieces, leaving a path for the knight's sword to escape. Clang! Andre, who was on the phone at the top of another building, suddenly saw a sword light flashing from the roof of the great cathedral. It fell down and swept across the entire great cathedral in a straight line. Kacha! The majestic great sage hall was neatly sliced apart by that sharp sword light. It was split into two halves, separating from each other and falling to the sides. Rumble! A loud sound that made the earth tremble was heard. The great cathedral, which had an extremely long history and scale, was turned into ruins and collapsed with a loud bang. Did it really become like this? Andre could not help but feel sad. Andre had already guessed this situation. After all, among the two people in the battle, one of them was the king, that the whole world was afraid of. If this level of damage was enough to end the battle, then it was already not bad. Thinking like this, Andre recomposed himself and used leap magic to jump in the direction of the collapsed great cathedral. At the same time, in the center of the ruined great cathedral, two people were facing each other. With a paw sound, Noah knelt on the ground with one knee, and his breathing became somewhat rapid. Recalling the sword strike that could split the heavens and earth, Noah cast his gaze toward the other side with lingering fear. There, Tony was staring blankly at Noah, and was extremely stunned. You blocked it? My magic sword? Hearing this, Noah did not have time to answer before a sudden sharp pain came from his head. Goo! The excessive pain made Noah hold his head and let out a muffled groan. It was not the pain caused by Tony's attack. It was the mental damage caused by the destruction of his soul. A total of 2 pieces of blaze were destroyed, which made Noah's mind suffer a violent impact, and his consciousness gradually faded away. Before losing consciousness, Noah heard Tony's laughter that represented joy and pleasure. You actually blocked my authority. You are the opponent that the heavens have prepared for me. I have my eyes on you. Become stronger. Become strong enough to fight me with all your strength. Noah Dole. Chapter 457. When Noah regained consciousness, he heard a frivolous voice before he could open his eyes. Oh, you're awake? Noah shuddered when he heard the familiar voice. He quickly opened his eyes and took in everything before him. 2 people entered Noah's sight. Yo! Tony, who was holding a cup of ice cream in his hand and eating while humming an unknown song, greeted Noah with a bright smile on his face. Did you sleep well? Tony greeted Noah very naturally, like greeting a roommate in the same dormitory. Others might think that Noah had a good relationship with Tony. As a result, Noah was in a trance for a second. I'm really sorry, Sir Noah. Andre, who was wearing a pair of glasses, sat beside Tony with an expressionless face. Please allow me to introduce myself to you. I am Andre Rivera, a trusted aide of Minister Salvador. You can just call me Andre. Hearing this, Noah finally reacted and recalled what happened before he lost consciousness. Because the knight's sword and revolver were destroyed by Tony's so-called authority, Noah also suffered from the mental impact of his soul being destroyed and lost consciousness. Recalling this matter, Noah had the spare energy to observe his surroundings. What surprised Noah was that he wasn't on the ground, but in the sky. To be more precise, he was on a plane. Through the window, Noah saw that the sky had turned completely dark and found himself in a first-class cabin. There were only 3 people in the cabin: Noah, Tony, and Andre. Undoubtedly, Noah was on the ground before he lost consciousness and woke up in the cabin. No matter how stupid he was, he could guess that Tony and Andre brought him here. Noah was stunned. What are you guys doing? I'm really sorry. Before Tony could say anything, Andre calmly explained for Noah, as if he was afraid that he would cause even more trouble. It's rude of us to bring you on the plane without your permission, but this is the order of the king. So please forgive us, Sir Noah. We'll talk about that later. Noah frowned and shifted his gaze to Tony. I want to know why you brought me on the plane. Well, don't be so angry. You must be bored on that island. So, as your best friend, I helped you make the decision. Tony said proudly, but his next sentence exposed his true intention. Besides, you're my opponent. How can I let you go? Noah's mouth twitched when he heard that. He turned to look at Andre. Can I kill him with a single slash? Please forgive us. Andre pushed up his glasses and said, although this troublesome. No, Minister Salbat-Lay was indeed rude. That was only because of the king's recognition of you. Please take this honor into consideration, and at the very least, don't fight on the plane. I'd like to fight with you again. Tony's eyes suddenly became serious as he stared at Noah. After all, you blocked my authority. I haven't met such an interesting opponent in a long time. You have to fight with me until the end. To be honest, I'm also very shocked. Andre raised his head. His reflective glasses made it impossible to see his expression, but the disbelief in his voice still showed. To be able to block that authority is something that even gods can't do. Sir, you accomplished this feat as a normal human. I believe that you will be famous all over the world. Can you guys wait? Noah's frown deepened. What is authority? And you just said God, right? Are you referring to the gods? After hearing his words, Tony and Andre exchanged a glance with each other. By the way, do you really not know anything? Tony asked curiously. Then do you know about the God Slayer? God Slayer? This title is really arrogant. Or in this world there are not only real gods, but also the so-called God Slayer. If that's the case, then this world is dangerous. No, I can't jump to conclusions. Let's ask first. To tell you the truth, I really don't know anything. Noah said bluntly. So if you can explain it to me, I'll be very happy. You really don't know anything. Tony blinked. Seems like you're dumber than me. Endure. Before I get the information I want, I'll endure it and wait for the opportunity to kill this guy. Generally speaking, with your strength, it's impossible for you to not know anything. However, it's too insensible of you to ask about other people's privacy. Andre sized Noah up seriously and changed the topic of the conversation. In that case, if you don't mind, as an apology for bringing you on the plane without your permission, let me explain it to you. After saying that, Andre explained the background of this world to Noah. There was no doubt that this was a modern world. However, in this world, there were also various unknown organizations. It was a group of people who used miracles that had survived the grinding of a long history. In Europe, these groups were called magic societies. Of course, the miracles used by these so-called magic societies were magic. In other countries, there were also groups that used powers that existed before, such as China's martial arts and magic, Japan's yin-yang jutsu and curses, and so on. Andre was a knight who was born in Europe. The knights here were not the kind of warriors who only knew how to wield swords and spears, but they were individuals who practiced both swords and magic. In Europe's magic societies, many of those who practiced both swords and magic were called knights. Among the knights, a group of people who were particularly outstanding and powerful would be awarded the rank of Grand Knight. However, above the Grand Knight, there was a rank called Paladin. That was the highest honor that a knight could obtain. Obtaining the rank of Paladin meant that this person was already at the top of the world. There were only 6 kings in the world that could suppress people who obtained the rank of Paladin. God Slayer. If the Paladins were still in the category of human beings, then the God Slayer was a true monster. He was an inhuman existence that could trample countless Paladins, the most glorious of human beings, under his feet. Perhaps some people would scoff at this title and think that it was nonsense. However, just as the name suggested, the so-called God Slayer referred to those who had slaughtered the gods and usurped the power of the gods. Authority, that was a power that only the gods could use. The humans who killed the gods would usurp this power from the gods and use it for themselves. Once they obtained the authority of the gods, this person was no longer a human, but a god slayer, a real inhuman existence. Therefore, the god slayer was called the tyrant, also known as the demon king, a true king above all humans. Tony was one of the god slayers. In other words, not only did Noah encounter the only 6 god slayers in the world in less than an hour after he arrived in this world, but the god slayer also found fault with him. Not only did he fight with the god slayer, but he also used the power of a human to block the power of a god. It was just that unbelievable. Noah silently looked at Tony, who was smiling at him, then shook his head at Andre. I won't doubt your words, but you said that this guy is a god slayer. To be honest, I really want to refute that. I understand your feelings very well. Andre's voice was full of sincerity when he said this. It was obvious that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Many people don't want to believe in this nightmare, but it is the truth. This idiot. No, Sarbalt-Lay is indeed a god slayer. There is no doubt about that. Isn't that too much? Tony protested, but he was ignored by Noah and Andre at the same time. That was all Noah asked with a frown on his face. Do gods really exist? Chapter 458. Noah could be considered to have been to many worlds. In these worlds, even if Noah hadn't seen them before, he had more or less heard of them. For example, in the world of fairy tale, there were dragons and demons. Although Noah had not seen them, Naz, Gajalu, and Windy were the children of dragons. Mira had also received the power of demons, which made Noah feel their existence. In the world of Magician's Night, it was needless to say, the fantasy species, that only existed in fantasy, were not much different from the gods. They were all existences that originally only existed in fantasy and myths. Noah even met 2 gods who called themselves his mother, Gaia and Aleia. These 2 existences were even more powerful than the so-called gods. Therefore, if he met the so-called gods in any world, Noah would not be surprised. Noah only wanted to know if such existences could really run all over the world and be eliminated by humans, giving birth to the 6 god slayers. That was why Noah asked such a question in a roundabout way. Do gods really exist? Or rather, do gods really exist in this world? Noah wanted to know the answer to this question. Perhaps Andre understood the meaning of Noah's words, but after thinking for a while, he shook his head. We don't know if they are the omnipotent gods that we imagine, but they were indeed born based on the myths that humans weaved. They are inexplicable existences that originally only existed in myths. A long, long time ago, God should have been able to freely roam the world. However, humans created myths and legends, so God could only exist according to the content of the myths, and could not truly descend into this world, Andre explained. The only gods that can appear on earth are those who rebelled against the myths and went against the content of the myths, bringing disaster to the world and humans. We call them the god of disobedience. I defeated the god of disobedience and successfully usurped the power of the gods, obtained the authority, and became a god slayer. Tony's tone was so relaxed that it was as if he was talking about killing a mosquito instead of killing a god. Well, although I didn't have that idea at first, when I came back to my senses, I had already become such a troublesome existence. The first time, I almost died, but later on it was much smoother. Sarbathur is indeed a king who killed a god. Andre seemed to be unable to bear Tony's words and said seriously, although I don't know if they are omnipotent gods in the religious sense, it is a fact that the god of disobedience will appear all over the world from time to time, and only the god slayers, who also have the power of God, can fight against them. Therefore, the magic societies all around the world will respect the god slayers. It is not only because they can protect humans from the gods, but also because humans can't resist them. Having said that, Andre sized up Noah again. Your Excellency Noah, now you know how shocking your achievements are, right? Aren't you exaggerating a little? Noah glanced at Tony without changing his expression. Indeed, Tony is very powerful, but I only blocked his sword. It's not worth the exaggeration, is it? It's not an exaggeration. Andre finally laughed bitterly. Do you know what the authority that Sarbathar used when he fought you was? Upon hearing this, Noah could not help but be startled. In Europe, there is a wise parliament that specializes in collecting information on god slayers. The wise parliament, named Sarbathar's Silver Hand of Rending. Andre hesitated for a moment, and finally chose to reveal this piece of information that many people knew. That is the authority that Sarbathar seized from the Celtic god king, Nuada. It is the power that allows Sarbathar to gain the ability to cut through everything. Not only does it increase the attack range of Sarbathar's slash, but it can also cut through everything. Not to mention fragile things like the human body. It can even cut through magic, the ground, and even the sea. Therefore, even most gods can't block Sarbathar's slash head-on. That was why Sarbathar called it the sword that no one in this world can block. That was why Sarbathar could use the authority of the demon sword to gain the power to fight against the gods. After understanding this, Noah was speechless, and at the same time, he smiled bitterly in his heart. Block Sarbathar's demon sword? But Noah did not block Sarbathar's slash at all. Tony's sword had cut Noah's Crush Knight's sword and Magician, which had been strengthened by hardening runes, into two halves. How could Noah block such a tyrannical sword? The reason Noah was able to remain unscathed under Sarbathar's slash was because he released Bio at the critical moment and let Bio take Sarbathar's demon sword in his place. After that, Bio was cut in half by Sarbathar's demon sword and returned to Noah's body. Of course, Bio did not have a fixed form, so physical attacks could not do any damage to Bio. He was also the nemesis of Sarbathar's demon sword. It was because Bio took Sarbathar's slash that Noah was able to remain unscathed. Therefore, it was not Noah who blocked Sarbathar's demon sword, but Bio's body that took the damage from Sarbathar's demon sword, preventing it from touching Noah's body. However, Noah now understood why Sarbathar's slash was so terrifying. Sarbathar's silver hand should be referring to Sarbathar's silver arm. Sarbathar's silver arm could not only increase the range of his attack, but it could also cut through everything. Even magic, the ground, and the sea could be cut in half. It was because of this that Sarbathar could not see Sarbathar's slash from such a long distance away. Sarbathar's knight's sword and magician were also cut in half by Sarbathar's crush and magician. If Bio was not there, Noah would be in danger. Alright, I understand how powerful the God Slayer is now. Noah looked at Sarbathar and said doubtfully, but even if I can block your demon sword, it doesn't mean that I can win, right? That's why I brought you here. Sarbathar's expression became more or less unpleasant. I even used my authority, but you suddenly fell. Undoubtedly, you did not receive any damage, and the battle ended. It's really annoying. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly fall? Andre was also puzzled. Your Excellency has already blocked Sarbathar's slash. You can definitely continue the battle with Sarbathar, right? That's right, that's right. That's why that battle does not count. Sarbathar shouted like a child. Unless you fight with me again, I won't admit the outcome of that battle. You're a god slayer, yet you still want to keep pestering a normal person like me. Noah was stunned. If you like to battle so much, you should go find those gods of disobedience. Only they can satisfy you, can't they? Those are just enemies, not opponents. Sarbathar smiled, but his eyes were extremely bright. I don't lack enemies, I only lack opponents. But you shouldn't be looking for me, right? Noah frowned. Even if I can block your slash, I'm just a normal person. Aren't there 5 other god slayers in this world other than you? Can't you go find them and fight? But you have a sword that even I can only admit defeat, right? Sarbathar narrowed his eyes and stared at Noah. If I can't fight you with my full strength, when we both have the same sword, that would be too boring. Fight you with your full strength. Noah was stunned for a moment and was speechless. So you plan to fight me when we get off the plane? However, Sarbathar unexpectedly shook his head. We both have the same sword, but I still have my authority. If I fight you with my full strength, it would be like cheating. Even if I win, there's nothing to be happy about. Then why did you bring me here? Noah rolled his eyes. Why? Sarbathar suddenly smiled. Well, don't worry, I already have a plan. Noah and Andre immediately became alert. If they were led by the nose by this idiot, it would definitely cause some trouble in the end. Definitely. Chapter 459. After that, Noah found out from Andre that he hadn't been in a coma for long. He had only woken up about 2 hours later. Originally, if the blaze was destroyed, the user would have to sleep for at least a full day before waking up. Moreover, they would also fall into a state of fatigue, and so on. It would take at least 3 days, or even a week before they could fully recover. However, Noah was different from the other blaze users. Noah's blaze was not a materialization of the soul, but a materialization of the weapon. It was an external weapon that transformed into a part of the user's soul. Therefore, even if Noah's blaze was destroyed, Noah would only receive a part of the mental impact. He would not be like the other blaze users, who would fall into a severe coma once the blaze was destroyed. Therefore, Noah only used a short 2 hours to recover. Other than that, there were no other side effects. If it wasn't for the fact that Tony's magic sword had destroyed 2 of his blaze fangs, Noah wouldn't have fainted. However, this battle with Tony gave Noah a reminder. Noah's blaze was indeed a very useful and powerful weapon. However, at the same time, by exposing a part of his soul to the enemy's attack range, Noah had exposed his weakness. In the past, Noah had always thought that with the blaze, as hardness and the hardening runes, the blaze would not be so easily destroyed. But now, it seemed that there was always someone better than him. In this world, there were also people like Tony who possessed such terrifying strength. Therefore, he had to be more careful when using the blaze. Otherwise, once the blaze was destroyed, even if Noah did not lose, he would still be injured. It would be very disadvantageous for him in battle. The battle with Tony proved this point. If not for the blaze being destroyed and causing Noah to fall into a coma, then Noah would have been able to continue the battle. In the end, whether or not he would have lost to Tony was another matter. However, Noah had to admit that Tony the God Slayer was indeed very strong. In terms of overall strength, he should be above Noah. In addition, Andre had intentionally or unintentionally revealed that Tony did not only have the silver hand, but also had other powers. Presumably, Tony's strength had reached a level that Noah could not imagine for the time being. Just thinking about how he had met such a terrifying person when he had just arrived in this world gave Noah a headache. Fortunately, there were less than 6 people like Tony in the world. Otherwise, Noah would really have to consider whether he should be a little more restrained in this world and search for the world fragment, while trembling in fear. Just like this, with Andre explaining the structure and background of this world and Tony's yawns, Noah's group finally arrived at their destination after dawn. Rome Fiumicino Airport, the international airport of the Italian capital. Under Andre's lead, Noah and Tony both yawned as they walked out of the airport. Noah looked tired and yawned repeatedly because he had spent the whole night trying to get more information about this world from Andre. He hadn't slept all night, so he looked tired and yawned continuously. Tony, on the other hand, just wanted to sleep in. However, when Andre saw this scene, he felt that Noah and Tony were unexpectedly harmonious. Rome. After yawning, Noah glanced at Tony. It's time for you to tell me why you brought me here, right? Well, don't be so anxious. Perhaps it was because Noah mentioned something important. Tony's spirit was lifted, and he asked Andre with a rare serious expression. The people should have gathered, right? Since you're the one who gave the order, they naturally won't disobey. But no matter what, there's only one night. There's no way they can make it here in time, right? Andre pushed up his glasses and looked at Tony with a bitter expression. If you allow, let me ask, why did you ask all the magic associations in Italy to gather here in the capital? All the magic associations in Italy to gather in Rome? Hearing this sentence, Noah was stunned. Noah did not doubt that Tony had the power to gather all the magic associations in Italy. After all, Tony was not only a king who killed gods, but he was also the king of swords, who ruled the magic associations in Italy, and was respected as the leader of the local magicians. Although he was the leader, Tony basically ruled over all the magic associations under his rule without ruling. This was not surprising, because Tony himself was not a leader at all. If he really managed all the magic associations in Italy, the world would have been in chaos. It was precisely because of this that André was able to accompany Tony and play the role of alliance leader for Tony. As an old friend of Tony before he became the God Slayer, André was not only Tony's confidant, but also had the title of Deacon Wong. He was one of the few people who could criticize Tony directly. It could be said that without André, Tony could only be regarded as a warrior, and did not have the function of being the leader of the magic circle in Italy. According to André, he was usually responsible for the statistics of all the problems related to gods in Italy, and was responsible for the work of letting Tony solve these problems. Tony also felt that these things were too troublesome, so he threw them all to André, and was satisfied with just being responsible for fighting. But now, Tony had taken the initiative to exercise his authority as the leader of the alliance. Suspicious. It was too suspicious. Not to mention André. Even Noah was vigilant, and looked at the smiling humanoid troublemaker in front of him. Since you have something to do, then I won't bother you. Let's part ways here, bye-bye. Leaving this sentence, Noah was just about to run away when Tony tightly grabbed his shoulder. Don't be so cold. It's rare to come to the capital of Italy and see the gathering of all the magic associations in Italy. As your best friend, how can I not take you to see it? Tony smiled very brightly. In short, you come with me. Rare? Undoubtedly. It was you who kidnapped me. You call it rare? Even those magic associations were gathered by you. Is that rare? Noah was getting more and more ominous premonition, which made him extremely resistant. Besides, I'm not your confidant, nor will I be your best friend. There's no need for me to go to that kind of event. Let go of me. After saying that, Noah struggled to get up, but Tony held him tightly. How troublesome. In that case, I can only drag you over by force. Thus, Noah and Tony got into a scuffle outside the airport, leaving the corner of André's mouth twitching. Perhaps the two of them might actually get along. In the end, Noah was dragged away by Tony's persistent pestering. All the magic associations in Italy would gather in the largest hotel in Rome. Noah, Tony, and André arrived at the hotel together. Under the guidance of the waitress who didn't look like an ordinary person, they took the elevator to the top floor and arrived at an extremely spacious room. Tony's summoning order was issued just before boarding the plane. In other words, only one night had passed since the summoning order was issued. Naturally, it was impossible to gather all the magic associations in Italy in one night. So until now, only one person in charge of the magic association had arrived at the hotel. The room that Noah and the rest arrived at was the room where the person from the magic association stayed. According to André, the other party seemed to have just fallen asleep last night, but got up because of Tony's summoning order and rushed to the hotel overnight. Perhaps it wasn't just the people from this magic association, but all the people in charge of the magic associations in Italy. They rushed over last night, but hadn't arrived yet. What an irresponsible king. With André pushing the door open, two figures soon appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 460. In that extremely luxurious suite, at this moment, a man and a woman were sitting on the sofa respectively, seemingly chatting. The man was about 40 years old. He wasn't burly, but he was abnormally tall and straight. He had a well-sculpted face and an intellectual temperament. He looked like an Iron General who had been on the battlefield for a long time and had undergone extremely strict training. He gave off a mellow, elegant, and dignified feeling of vicissitudes. A young lady sat opposite the dignified middle-aged man. She looked about 15 or 16 years old and was slightly over 160 centimeters tall. She had waist-length golden hair and an exquisite face that made one wonder if it was specially crafted by a famous craftsman. That wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that this petite young lady exuded a noble and confident temperament. Her delicate face was also filled with the dignity and confidence of a queen. The instant Noah saw this young lady, he felt as though he saw Lilith. Both of them shared an unusual similarity in terms of appearance and temperament. Logically speaking, compared to a 40-year-old middle-aged man, an average male would definitely be attracted to such a temperamental young lady when entering such a room. However, apart from Noah, who paid a little attention to this young lady due to her resemblance to Lilith, both Tony and Andre shifted their attention to the middle-aged man. "Long time no see, Mr. Salbar." The middle-aged man stood up and bowed to Tony before greeting Andre. "Long time no see, Mr. Andre." "Long time no see, Mr. Salbar, Mr. Andre." The golden-haired girl also stood up. Instead of saying that she was confident, it would be more appropriate to say that she was gorgeous. However, her smile was extremely aggressive, just like that of a female lion. "It's a pleasure to see both of you as healthy as before. Long time no see." Andre returned the greeting politely. Oh, I was wondering who arrived first. So it's the two of you." Compared to Andre, Tony's greeting was as straightforward as if he was greeting an acquaintance. However, don't think that Tony is being polite. Ugh. Tony scratched his head at the golden-haired young lady. "You're that Browntree? Erica Browntree." The girl named Erica smiled elegantly at Tony, as if she was not surprised in the slightest. "You should remember my name by now, right?" "Sorry, my memory isn't too good, which is why I can't remember any of those troublesome magic tricks. Only this thing works better." Tony patted the box on his shoulder and chuckled. "Of course, no matter how bad my memory is, I'll remember the names of people I've met 5 times. I've only met you 3 times, right?" "We've met 7 times, my monarch." The gorgeous smile on Erica's face finally disappeared, but her confident expression remained. "No matter what, I, Erica Browntree, am happy to see you as healthy as before." Hearing this, everyone, including Noah, except Tony, had the same thought in their minds. Erica Browntree was probably lying, right? After all, the God Slayer was in existence that could be called the Demon King, although he could protect humans from the hands of God. At the same time, because of his overly powerful strength, he could cause all kinds of problems and cause trouble for humans. For example, Tony, who was an empty-headed guy, wouldn't mind stirring up the whole of Italy as long as he had a battle that satisfied him. He was a real troublemaker. Therefore, everyone could tell that Erica Browntree's words were insincere. "Let me introduce them to everyone." Andre stepped forward to let Noah enter the field of vision of everyone present, as if he wanted to change the topic. "This is Paolo Browntree, the general of the Magic Club Red Copper Black Cross in Milan." Andre introduced the middle-aged man to Noah before introducing Erica. "This is Erica Brantley, also a member of the Red Bronze Black Cross. Generalissimo Paolo is Miss Erica's uncle, and Miss Erica herself is a genius child who has obtained the rank of Grand Knight. There is only one other person in Italy who has obtained the same honor at her age." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Erica. Under Noah's gaze, Erica wasn't moved by Andre's evaluation at all. Instead, she smiled brilliantly as if it was a matter of course. "Andre, you don't have to say that. The achievements of me, Erica Browntree, are known to all of Italy. No, the whole world. There's no need to say anything." Hearing that, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Erica immediately frowned and looked at Noah with a slightly unhappy look. "Sir, are you making fun of me?" "You misunderstood." Noah shrugged. "It's just that your appearance, temperament, and tone are all very similar to a friend of mine. So I couldn't help but laugh." "I'm sorry." "That's right." Although they couldn't be said to be carved from the same mold, Lilith and Erica were both confident and gorgeous. Even their appearances were very similar, with both blonde hair reaching their waists. Looking at Erica, Noah felt as if he were looking at Lilith, which was why he chuckled. "I see." Erica, on the other hand, combed her long hair with relief. "To be able to be mentioned in the same breath as me, Erica Browntree, your friend must also be a gorgeous lady, right? Well, rather than a lady, it's better to call her a young lady, right?" Recalling Lilith's willfulness and confidence, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up. "In this regard, Miss Erica is exactly the same as my friend." "Is that so?" Erica narrowed her eyes, and the gorgeous smile on her face began to transition to a somewhat dangerous level. "But I'm not a young lady, who only knows how to embroider in her room. Sir, why don't you try my sword and magic a little? With that said, traces of spell power began to rise from Erica's body with a confident and elegant smile. In this world, the power used to perform miracles, such as the aura of the East, the magic power of the West, and the spiritual power of the East, were collectively known as spell power. It was due to this that in the previous battle, Tony sincerely said to Noah that his spell power was really strong. In other words, Noah's magic power was also known as spell power, which was the general name of the world. Noah didn't expect Erica to have such a strong desire to show off. His gaze toward her became thought-provoking. She really is similar in all aspects. Erica. Paul reprimanded. Don't be rude. Uncle, you're wrong. Erica suddenly smiled. For us knights, exchanging swords is also a kind of etiquette. Since this sir can accompany Sarbar like Andre, it seems that he is also a capable person, who is no weaker than a grand knight. Let me give him the opportunity to dance with me. That's something that others can't even ask for. Andre and Paul looked at each other in dismay. This Erica was no longer confident but arrogant, wasn't she? But this arrogance is not disgusting at all. Sure enough, this girl is carved from the same mold as Lilith. Miss Erica, you'd better leave this opportunity for others. Noah pretended to raise his hands in surrender, and took the opportunity to speak. I'm just a passerby. You can talk about business. I'll take my leave. With that, Noah turned around, and Tony's face immediately appeared in front of him, giving Noah a fright. My dear friend, stay with me for a while longer. It'll be over soon. Tony grabbed Noah's shoulder with a smile. While Noah looked sullen, he turned his head and looked at Paul. Are you the only ones here? The other magic societies are still on their way. Paul laughed dryly. The order was just issued last night. It's a bit late. How troublesome. Forget it, I won't wait anymore. You can tell them when they come. Tony made such a declaration. I want news of God. The sooner the better. Chapter 461. I want news of the gods. The sooner the better. When this sentence came out of Tony's mouth and entered the ears of Noah, Andre, Paul, and Erica, almost everyone had the same thought. This King of Swords must be itching to cause trouble again. This is going to be a little difficult. Paul had a troubled look on his face. Sarbatlii should also understand that although the gods have left a lot of traces in this world, the god of disobedience can't appear at will. Could it be that Sarbatlii has a way to summon the god of disobedience yourself? If there was such a way, it would be easy. I wouldn't be here. Tony waved his hand very casually. Anyway, you all go and collect news of the gods. If there is any, tell me immediately. Also, I don't want the kind of gods that are so weak that they can't even take one sword strike from me. They must be the kind of god of disobedience that is at the level of the god king, or main god. There were strong and weak gods. According to Andre, the strength of the gods was not determined by their strength or popularity in mythology, but whether they had a strong sense of self. Therefore, the god of disobedience that appeared on the ground also had strong and weak gods. The powerful god of disobedience could easily sink a small island and bring about disasters like natural disasters. For example, once one of those famous sun gods appeared, the whole earth would be in high temperature just by appearing. The god king and main god level gods that Tony mentioned were such existences, which could be said to be the highest level of gods. Some of the weak god of disobedience couldn't even take one sword strike from Tony, but that was only relative to the kings who killed gods. In the face of such gods, humans were not without the ability to resist, but they were absolutely unable to confront them head-on. At most, they could only seal them. It was because of this that god slayers were not so easy to be born. It was a miracle that could not be achieved by the power of humans themselves, and even the most advanced magicians could not do it. To be able to become a god slayer was all based on luck. Moreover, it wasn't the ordinary kind of luck. It had to be the kind of luck that triggered 3 or 4 miracles under very, very rare circumstances. In other words, wanting to become a god slayer was no less than a beggar wanting to become an emperor who ruled the world. No matter what, gods and god-slaying kings were not welcomed. Such an existence that possessed a power that humans absolutely could not resist brought unimaginable fear and chaos to people. Just like now, Doni proposed that they must find the whereabouts of God. Even if Paolo was the commander of the Magic Society Red Copper Black Cross, which had the ability to rank among the top in Italy, he still couldn't resist. Most importantly, such an irresistible existence was now asking people to find another even more irresistible existence. It was imaginable how difficult and helpless Paul was. I don't think you should be anxious about this kind of thing. Even Erica showed some distress and said, since ancient times, the most abundant thing is the appearance of the god of disobedience. I remember that you have become a god slayer for less than 5 years, but you still killed 4 god of disobedience in these 5 years. So please wait patiently. There will always be a chance to satisfy you in the future. Here, as a king, you should be more understanding to the person who gives advice. Even Andre was half advising and half warning. Please listen to Miss Erica's request, and show your tolerance, King. What a joke. If it was not necessary, who would want to let the god of disobedience fight with the god of disobedience? That would definitely bring trouble to the people around in the form of disasters. So no matter what, Erica and others had to be perfunctory. I know these things. Doni frowned. Do I look like someone who likes to cause trouble? As soon as this sentence came out, Erica, Paul, and Andre looked at Doni speechlessly. Their stares made Doni feel guilty. This time, I really don't want to mess around. Doni quickly argued. As you said, the god will appear sooner or later. And by then, this god will still need to be dealt with. In that case, isn't it the same for you to take the initiative to collect information? Upon hearing that, Erica, Paul, and Andre exchanged glances. They had to admit that Tony's words made sense. I understand. Paul hesitated for a while and finally nodded. You're right. If the god of disobedience appears, we still need to deal with it. Only the king can fight against the god. So it's not strange for us to collect information for you. As long as you don't mess around, Erica said bluntly. I'm just afraid that you can't wait and really do something to make the god of disobedience appear. Doni was taken aback and muttered to himself. Seeing this scene, Erica, Paul, Andre, and the others felt a chill in their hearts. Noah, who had been watching from the sidelines, could only express his understanding of the three's reaction. After all, this Doni seemed like he was really considering whether to take the initiative to lure out the god of disobedience. Wasn't it? Andre, Tony's trusted aide, who acted as a supervisor to prevent Doni from messing around, was about to say something when Doni spoke first. All in all, it's right for you to collect information on the god. When those who are late arrive, let them collect as well. Until then, I'll be waiting here. Hearing this, everyone was surprised. Wait, the King of Swords who could stir up chaos in Italy for the sake of battle, was actually willing to wait? You didn't come here for this purpose, did you? Is it necessary to do this? Noah couldn't help but ask. Mr. Paul also said that only the God Slayer can deal with the god. When the god of disobedience appears, they will definitely report it to you. Why are you in a hurry to collect information on the god? Isn't that obvious? Doni replied without hesitation. Of course it's for you. As soon as these words came out, everyone was startled. For me? Noah looked at Doni in astonishment. Why? Do you still need to ask? Doni said with a smile. This god is not for me, but for you. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ahem. Andre coughed, pushed his glasses and pretended to be calm as he asked. If I understand correctly, Salbalay, you want His Excellency Noah to slay the god? Paul and Erica also cast their gazes on Doni with absurd emotions in their eyes. Sigh. Noah sighed and said to Doni tiredly, just tell me what you're thinking. My friend, didn't I say before that I only wanted to fight with you with all my might? Doni said matter-of-factly, but my authority is a bit of a cheat. It's not fair to you at all. So? Noah had a guess in his heart that made him speechless. You brought me here because you want me to kill a god and become a god slayer like you. This way, the conditions between us will be equal, and you will be able to do your best, right? Oh. Doni cried happily. You're indeed my best friend. You really know me. Donnie's so-called plan was finally exposed. He actually wanted to train a god slayer with his own hands. How preposterous. Noah, who had fallen silent, suddenly turned around and punched Donnie's abdomen heavily. Bang! Donnie, who did not expect Noah to suddenly attack, was hit squarely by the punch. His eyes bulged, and he squatted down while clutching his abdomen. This time, not to mention Paul and Andre, even Erica opened her mouth in shock and looked at Noah in disbelief. He had actually punched a god-slaying monarch? Sorry, I couldn't help it, Noah said expressionlessly, turned around, and walked out of the room without hesitation. Wait, my best friend. Donnie clutched his abdomen and chased after Xian with a twisted face. In the vast and luxurious room, only Erica, Paul, and Andre were left looking at each other. Their eyes were constantly communicating, and they could not speak for a long time. However, each of them had the same thought in their mind. This time, there would be a lot of trouble because of that idiot. Chapter 462. As the largest hotel in the Italian capital Rome, although the people here did not have the habit of sharing baths, there were still large baths. Splash! With the sound of water splashing, Noah lay down in the water and leaned back. He rubbed his temples and sighed. On the other side of Noah, a chuckling, frivolous voice sounded. I knew you wouldn't want to leave me. These words sounded like words of love from someone who was very infatuated with Noah. It was a pity that the person who said that wasn't a beauty or even a woman. Instead, it was a man who made Noah wish he could slash him to death with his sword. You and I are best friends who have crossed swords. Even I feel like I'm cheating. You must be unwilling to lose to me in terms of authority, right? Tony, who was soaking in the hot water like Noah, said with a proud expression. As a swordsman, this is the time for you to work hard and become stronger. Then, you can seek revenge on me and defeat me with your sword once again. This is the true path of a king. For example, you can kill a god or something like that. My dear friend, I believe you can understand. Noah squinted his dead fish eyes at Tony, who was constantly trying to persuade him to kill a god. For the first time, he had the thought of kneeling down and surrendering to someone. At first, Noah wanted to sneak out of the hotel and leave. Who would have thought that Tony, who couldn't find Noah, would be so anxious that he would pull out his sword and use Silver Hand of Shredding in an attempt to cut the entire hotel in half, which scared Noah out of his hiding place. When Noah asked Tony why he pulled out his sword, Tony said this. There are too many obstacles in this building. I don't know any magic, so it won't be easy to find someone. So if I cut down the whole hotel, it should be easier to find him. Noah almost knelt down. Just because you want to find someone, you want to destroy a hotel? Even if you have no common sense, there should be a limit, right? Or is this the only way Tony can think of? In the end, Noah came to a conclusion in both aspects. So Noah gave up on escaping. Who knows if this idiot will cut the whole Rome in half in order to find Noah. Moreover, all the magic associations in Italy respected Donnie as their leader. As long as Donnie gave the order, all of Italy would begin to hunt down Noah. Noah didn't want to make such a big deal out of it. Therefore, Noah had lost because he was competing with an idiot. That was not wise at all. In short, Noah felt that dealing with Tony was more tiring than dealing with Naz. At the very least, if Naz couldn't control it, he could directly silence him with a punch. But Donnie was many levels stronger than Naz. Even Noah was defeated by his authority of the God Slayer. What else could he do? I have prepared the conditions for you, my dear friend. As long as there is news of God, you can go to the battlefield to kill the enemy and become one of my kind. Tony was getting more and more excited. At that time, we will fight each other with power against power, sword against sword. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I say, you should let me go now, right? Noah felt that he might really cry, and his tone was extremely weak. Let's not talk about beautiful or not. Tony, do you really believe that I can kill God? Was God so easy to kill? If so, there would be more than 6 God Slayers in the world. At least, Noah was not as optimistic as Tony. He really thought that he could kill God. If you want to kill God, you can't just have power. From Andre, Noah also learned about the current situation of the 6 God-slayers. According to Andre, apart from 2 to 3 people, almost half of the God-slayers were just ordinary people before they became God-slayers. It was said that before Tony became a God-slayer, he only knew how to use a sword and nothing else. Not only did he not know magic, but Tony's body could not even store curses. Killing God depended entirely on luck and miracles. Otherwise, he would have been able to seal the weakest God and not kill him. To be honest, Noah did not think that he was weaker than the weakest God. But defeating and killing were 2 completely different concepts. Therefore, even if Noah was confident in his own strength, he did not dare to say that he could definitely kill God. Compared to Noah, Tony was obviously more confident. Tony squinted his bright eyes and met Noah's gaze. What appeared in his eyes wasn't trust or suspicion. Instead, it was excitement, as though he had met his match. "I believe that you will become one of my kind." Hearing this, Noah frowned. "What makes you say that?" "Who knows?" Tony shrugged irresponsibly. "At the very least, I don't feel that you can't do it. My intuition tells me that you can do it." Noah fell silent at Tony's words. Although Noah did not know whether Tony was joking or not, to be honest, he did not feel that he could not do it. Noah's intuition was very accurate. Since Noah himself did not feel that he could not do it, then it was most likely that he could do it. "I'm afraid that Tony also has amazing intuition, right?" Noah did not know whether it was Tony's own talent, or a talent he gained after becoming a God-slayer. However, since Tony had said so, only he knew whether it was ridiculous or not. In fact, Noah was not uninterested in meeting the so-called gods of this world. After coming to this world, Noah not only needed to find a world fragment, he also needed to find a way to strengthen himself. The person who slays a god can seize the divine power of the god he slays and become a god-slayer. Without a doubt, if Noah could succeed in slaying a god, then he would obtain the power called authority and become a god-slayer. Noah's strength would definitely increase by several folds. As long as Hades was as strong as Tony, he wouldn't have to be afraid of him anymore. Tony did not know if he saw Noah's wavering heart, but he laughed in a relaxed manner. "I know, Noah. If you hadn't fainted that day, you would have been able to bring out an even more shocking power." Tony stretched out his hand and grasped his sword in his hand, truly demonstrating the state of man and sword are inseparable. "Even so, I don't feel like I'll lose to you. If that's the case, then I won't lose. After all, other than the authority of the demonic sword, I still have 3 other authorities that I haven't used yet," Tony said in an intoxicated tone as he gently stroked the blade of his sword. "If that's the case, then you won't be able to satisfy me. You have to become stronger, or even become one of my kind." As soon as he finished speaking, Tony pointed his sword at Noah, causing Noah to feel a chill in his heart. Anyone who can become a god-slayer is destined to become an excellent warrior. And I believe that you are an excellent warrior. Tony's lips curled into a sinister arc. "So, my friend, do you really not have the slightest thought of seeking revenge from me?" Noah sighed under Tony's piercing gaze. "No. How could that be possible?" Although the battle with Tony wasn't a battle to the death, Noah had to use all of his skills to barely block Tony's sword. Ever since he learned magic, Noah had never lost so miserably. Under such circumstances, even Noah wouldn't believe that he didn't want to take revenge. If possible, Noah really wanted to fight with Tony again. Fight with all his strength. Then defeat Tony. But as Tony said, with Noah's current strength, it was impossible for him to win. Apart from the authority of the demonic sword, Tony still had 3 other authorities that he hadn't used yet. The gap between Noah and Tony was too big. At least it wasn't just big. If he wanted to defeat Tony, there was only one way. God-slayer. Usurp the authority of a god and become a god-slayer. This way, Noah would have a chance to defeat Tony. At this moment, Noah bitterly smiled. "You won." Tony smiled from the bottom of his heart. It was a blessing for his kind that was about to be born. Chapter 463. Just like that, 3 days passed. On the way back to his room, Noah touched his arm while frowning and hissing in pain. If one were to look closely, they would notice that there was a tear on Noah's arm. Blood was still dripping from it, but there was no wound. No, it should be said that the original wound had already healed under Noah's regenerative ability that was strengthened countless times by the protozoan virus. All that was left were the cracks in his clothes, traces of blood, and some residual pain on his body. Of course, if it was just an ordinary injury, the degree of a cut on the arm would not be enough to make Noah show pain. The reason why he was still like this was mainly because the sword that cut Noah was not an ordinary sword. Noah gritted his teeth when he recalled the scene of Tony using the lacerating silver hand, with a cheerful expression, and swinging the sword at him with a sunny smile on his face. That hateful guy. Once he enters battle mode, he can't hold back at all. He doesn't know how to hold back at all. 3 days ago, under Tony's persuasion, Noah finally decided to slay a god. Since he had decided to fight against a terrifying opponent who could rival Tony, Noah naturally had to make more preparations. Instead of saying that it was preparation, in fact, Noah just asked Tony to order a gymnasium around the hotel to be reserved, and then asked Tony to accompany him for training. Noah did this not because he wanted to make a last-minute effort, but because he wanted to get used to fighting against opponents of the level of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. When a person stayed in a dark place for a long time, their eyes would gradually adapt to the darkness. When a person stayed in a warm place for a long time, their body would gradually adapt to the high temperature. It was the same principle. If Noah were to fight against a high-level opponent like Tony, he would be able to adapt to the battle rhythm of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience. Thus, he would be able to better display his strength. As it turned out, this method was indeed effective. The long-distance slash that Tony used with the demon sword's authority could not be blocked, nor could it be seen with the naked eye. Although Noah's senses could detect Tony's long-range slash, Tony's slash was too fast. Even if he could detect it, Noah's body would not be able to keep up. This was also the reason why Noah had no choice but to block Tony's demon sword, even though he knew it would be terrible if he chose to block it. Instead, he relied on Bio to withstand Tony's demon sword. And now, after 3 days of training with Tony, Noah was gradually able to adapt to the speed of Tony's demonic sword and dodge it. But even so, accidents still happened sometimes. Noah's arm was injured because he was a little slow to react in the gymnasium just now. As a result, he was grazed by Tony's magic sword. With that, Noah's arm was split open with a large wound. An unstoppable demonic sword was not just for show. It seems that in addition to increasing the attack range and non-stop attacks, Tony's demonic sword can also make injuries more difficult to heal and aggravate the pain. Noah nodded as he wiped the blood off his arm. There are strong and weak gods, and naturally there are strong and weak authority. Tony's demonic sword, authority, is one of the best among all the God Slayers, and the God of Disobedience. If I can adapt to that kind of slash, I'll have a better chance against the God of Disobedience. I just don't know what kind of God Tony will find. Noah shook his head helplessly. I hope it's not the kind of God of Disobedience that has troublesome authority. At this moment, a voice sounded behind Noah. Isn't this Lord Noah? It was not so much a sweet voice, but rather a voice that purposely emphasized elegance and confidence. The moment he heard this voice, Noah knew who it was. He turned his head and looked behind him. What entered his sight was the person Noah had expected. She had long golden hair that reached her waist like a crown. She was a little short in height, but her figure was extremely large. Like a noble lady, she was walking out of the elevator. Her walking posture was very proper and majestic, attracting the attention of the people around her all the time. The Grand Knight of the Red Copper Black Cross Erica Brantuy. Beside this girl who had always emphasized her elegance was another girl. It was a girl who reminded people of a fairy. Her appearance was delicate and proper, but her expression was extremely tense. She gave people a feeling of cuteness and majesty at the same time. The girl tied her long silver hair into a ponytail and let it hang behind her. As she walked, it swayed like a tail. Together with Erica, she gradually approached Noah. Looking at this unfamiliar girl, Noah stopped walking and allowed Erica and the silver-haired fairy girl to walk in front of him. However, As soon as she arrived in front of Noah, the silver-haired girl clearly sized up Noah with a scrutinizing gaze. After a while, she suddenly opened her mouth. After a while she suddenly said, "Are you Lord Noah Dole?" The girl's tone was the kind that would make people feel that she was too rigid and stern. Noah often encountered such a tone from people like Alusha and Orange Bar, so he nodded with ease. "You are? Excuse me. As a knight, I should first report my name." The silver-haired girl clenched her right fist and placed it in front of her left chest. She bowed slightly to Noah and saluted. "Greetings from the Red Copper Black Cross, Liliana Kranikar." Liliana Kranikar? Noah seemed to have heard this name from somewhere. "I remember, it seems to be related to a genius child who obtained the glory of Grand Knight before she reached adulthood, just like me, Erica Brantley." Without giving Noah a chance to recall, Erica laughed out loud. "In the whole of Italy, the only person of the same age who can make me, Erica Brantley, acknowledges Liliana. Don't forget it." Hearing Erica's words, Noah remembered. In the past few days, Noah also learned a lot about the European magic world from Andre and Paul. Among them, Erica and Liliana were the focus of attention. As for why, the reason was very simple. This was because both Erica and Liliana were not yet 16 years old, but they had both obtained the rank of Grand Knight, which could only be obtained by the most outstanding elites among the knights. There were only 2 people in the whole of Italy who could achieve this at this age. Erica Brantley, Liliana Kranikar. Only these 2 girls. "I'm really surprised," Noah couldn't help but say. "You 2 are actually together?" Noah heard that the 2 magic associations, Red Bronze Black Cross and Red Bronze Black Cross, seemed to be in a hostile relationship. He didn't expect that the treasures of the 2 magic associations would actually be together. "Liliana is my acknowledged competitor. How can I let her appear out of my sight?" Erica spread out her hands and revealed an inside story. "Not to mention, Liliana is my childhood sweetheart." "Don't call me that intimately, you vixen." Liliana couldn't help but burst out swearing. "I don't have such a good relationship with you. It's just an ill-fated relationship." Saying such a sentence, Liliana deliberately coughed to make herself serious and looked at Noah. "I just want to see what kind of man is rumored to be able to withstand the magic sword of Salbalaching." Hearing this, Noah was speechless. He didn't know when it started, but the story of Noah withstanding Tony's magic sword completely spread in the past 3 days. This also led to the heads of various magic associations from all over Italy looking at Noah with amazement, surprise, horror, and sometimes even horror. Not many people dared to come up and greet Noah. As Andre said, Noah had completely become a celebrity. Under such circumstances, Noah could only answer, "You came to me because of this?" "No, this is just by the way." Liliana's expression became more serious. "I came here to inform your excellency that there is news of God." Chapter 464. In a room on the top floor of the hotel, Tony sat cross-legged on the sofa, holding his sword and wiping it constantly. It was apparent that he was in a good mood. In front of Tony, Paul and Andre were also sitting on the sofa, but they seemed to be trying their best to persuade Tony. However, due to Tony's disregard, they seemed to be on the verge of tears. A hint of anger even appeared in Andre's eyes, and he was on the verge of exploding. But even so, Tony wasn't moved at all. He continued to wipe his sword and hummed a tune, completely ignoring Paul's and Andre's words. "Kacha!" With the slight sound of the door opening, Noah walked into the room, instantly attracting the attention of everyone in the room. "Yo, Noah, you're here?" Upon sight of Noah, Tony's sloppy attitude disappeared instantly. He gazed at Noah with a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. "Your prey is here." Erica and Liliana followed Noah here. At this moment, Liliana took a step forward and asked Tony in a respectful and questioning manner, "Pardon me for being blunt, Salbatier. Even though I've heard about this matter, do you really intend to let an ordinary person slay a deity?" "Lily, I think you'd better give up," Erica said with a vexed expression, which was rare of her. "How much time do you think we've spent on Salbatier in the past 3 days?" But Salbatier hasn't changed her mind. This can't be described as unscrupulous anymore, right? Liliana was speechless for a moment before turning to Andre. Andre, do you think this is all right too? Just like Miss Erica said, how much effort do you think I've spent on this stupid king in the past 3 days? Andre sighed tiredly. But Salpeter has no intention of compromising at all. We have no other choice. Your Excellency Noah. Even Paul turned to Noah and asked, do you think this is all right too? Everyone's eyes were focused on Noah. In the past 3 days, Noah's deeds had already spread throughout the magic societies in Italy. Now, as long as it was a magic association that belonged to Italy, they would definitely know that a man named Noah Doria had blocked the magic sword of the leader of Italy, the King of Swords, with his human body. To put it bluntly, even if this incident wasn't enough to be recorded in the history books, it was enough to attract the attention of the entire magic world. I believe that in the current Italy, there shouldn't be anyone who would feel that Noah is inferior to those who have the highest honor of the Holy Knight rank, right? Even so, it was still too irrational to challenge a god. After all, even if it were those who could be said to be the pinnacle of humanity, if they were to challenge the gods, it would be fine to seal those weak gods. But if they wanted to kill the gods, it would only be a daydream. Unless a miracle happened. Such a miracle had only happened 6 times in the past few hundred years, resulting in the birth of 6 god-slayers. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be. No one doubted Noah's strength. But killing a god wasn't something that could be done with strength. Therefore, almost no one thought that Noah could succeed. It all depended on whether Noah himself had such an understanding. Unfortunately, Noah had already made a decision. Everyone, you don't have to say any more. Just think of me as the kind of stupid person who overestimates himself and wants to challenge a god. Noah gave his answer tactfully. If I fail, you can just let your alliance leader step in. Well, before I became a god slayer, I was much weaker than Noah. Tony waved his hand impatiently. He's an opponent that I acknowledge. How can he lose to a mere god of disobedience? Hearing this sentence, whether it was Erica, who valued beauty, Paul, who had the identity of the commander-in-chief, or even Liliana and Andre, they all cursed in their hearts. A mere god of disobedience? Not many god-slayers would dare to say that, right? However, that was what Tony said. It wasn't because Tony was so strong that he could trample on the god of disobedience like an ant. It was just that Tony was talking nonsense with his own subjective impression. Compared to the god of disobedience, Tony obviously paid more attention to the so-called opponent, Noah, which was why he said so. Perhaps in Tony's heart, he had already determined that Noah couldn't fail, right? Should I say that he's really an idiot? Since even Sir Noah said so, it's useless for us to object. Paul shook his head and looked at Tony. We only hope that if Sir Noah fails, you can immediately rush over and deal with the god of disobedience, who brought disaster to the people. Don't worry. Tony smiled confidently. There's no need for that. Looking at Tony, who had no intention of changing his mind, everyone could only smile bitterly. To be honest, Tony might really believe that Noah could successfully kill a god more than Noah himself. Noah shook his head with a smile and looked straight at Paul. So, Mr. Paul, did the god of disobedience really appear? Yes. Although the place where it appeared was far from Rome, we still received the report. Paul finally became serious when it came to business. In the past, magic societies like us that were far away from the place where the god of disobedience appeared could only passively wait for the god of disobedience to cause trouble. But this time, because of your request, we were lucky enough to collect the information in advance. Just this morning, the Bronze Cross also received the same secret report. Perhaps because the society she belonged to was hostile to Paul, Liliana was not willing to be outdone. It is said that the god that appeared this time seems to have the appearance of the god of youth, and it hasn't caused any trouble yet. It seems like it's looking for something. God of youth. Noah and Tony looked at each other. Gods were originally born in myths. Whatever form they had in myths, they would generally be in that form. And there were many gods in myths that appeared in the form of youth. The god of youth, who seems to be looking for something? Noah pondered for a while before asking. Do you know what god it is? We haven't found out its real name yet. It was Erica who answered this question. Erica looked at Noah with a curious and provocative gaze, and shrugged very casually. However, there is information that someone has witnessed the god of youth turning into a gust of wind and disappearing. So the other party should be a god related to the wind, right? Wind. Noah frowned at first, but then he relaxed his brows. Is there any other information? This god that appears in the form of a youth will only appear in some ruins and seaside. Paul sighed aloud. There hasn't been any trouble yet. It should be because this god is still looking for something, and he hasn't found it yet. If he finds it, then it won't be so peaceful anymore. In other words, is this the calm before the storm? Tony couldn't help but clench his sword. His eyes gradually became bright, but his expression was very conflicted. I really want to go and meet this god, but it's Noah's prey. Ching, are you really not going to think about it? Erica seized the opportunity and said in a tempting tone. Maybe it's a very powerful god. Liliana, Paul and Andre also looked at Tony expectantly. No one wanted to see the battle between the god Slayer and the god of disobedience, because every battle meant that there would be a price to pay. For example, the collapse of a building under a powerful force was a common occurrence. However, instead of letting the layman deal with the god, everyone present was obviously more willing to see Tony take action. You don't have to persuade me. Don't look at me like this. I'm very righteous. Tony curled his lips. So, where is the god of disobedience now? Sardinia, Paul said. The god that appeared is in Sardinia. As soon as this sentence came out, Noah, Tony and Andre were all stunned. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were in Sardinia 3 days ago. Chapter 465. Sardinia. Returning to this island again after 3 days. Noah actually had a feeling that things were still the same, but the people had changed. Standing on the busy street, Noah recalled that he had met a god slayer in less than an hour after coming to this world 3 days ago. He had even fought with the god slayer. Now 3 days later, he had even decided to kill a god. Noah sighed in his heart. Who would have thought that he would encounter so many things as soon as he came to this world? Not to mention, in such a world, there were the so-called god slayers and disobedient gods. I've really come to an incredible world. After leaving such a murmur that only he could hear, Noah lifted his feet and walked forward. Around him, on the streets that were filled with people, regardless of whether they were men, women, old or young, all of them cast their gazes in Noah's direction the moment he passed by. Their eyes were filled with amazement. Of course, this amazement was not directed at Noah, but at the 2 girls beside Noah. Her long golden hair and silver hair shone brightly under the light of the setting sun, even giving off a feeling of sparkling light. Erica and Liliana walked to Noah's left and right and chatted with each other. Lily, we are now on a holiday island. Why don't you relax a little and let yourself relax? Erica Brantley, although I know that the more important the time, the more you like to use a relaxed attitude to show your ease. At such an important moment, I really hate your pretentiousness. Have you forgotten what we are here for? You are still the same. Once you are in a bad mood, you will speak without thinking. You are always so serious, which will scare away the gentlemen who come to chat with you. I'll say it again, we are not here for a holiday, Erica. If you like to play, then play by yourself. I hope you will not disturb me. Alas, you are so rigid that you have become a poor woman who likes to fantasize about some incredible plots. I am not that kind of person. Haha, your attitude explains everything, Lily. Tisk, you vixen. You like to play with me since I was a child. You won't let me go until now. Because Lily's reaction is really interesting, isn't it? One day, I will definitely kill you. Erica and Liliana never stopped talking like this from leaving Rome to taking the plane, from getting off the plane to entering the street. The 2 young ladies, who were like the sun and the moon, had dazzling golden hair and soft silver hair respectively. They accompanied Noah, as if it was only natural for them to do so. The surrounding people's gazes were all focused on the 2 young ladies. The golden and silver young ladies seemed to have gotten used to it. They didn't mind it at all, and continued to bicker, while following Noah closely. Noah couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Why did you two come with me? Noah was just talking to himself. Noah had already guessed the reason. As expected, Liliana gave a serious answer. Since you don't intend to take action, it is our responsibility to stop the disaster brought by the god of disobedience. As a knight, be it me or the Bronze Cross, we have the obligation to face it. Compared to Liliana's serious reason, Electra's explanation was a little strange. Even you, who came out of nowhere, can replace Salba Lay to face the god. If I, Erica Brantley, can't show my bravery, that will be the most humiliating thing. Although Noah said that, he knew that there was another reason for these two girls to come with him, and that was to supervise Noah. To be more precise, they were here to witness the entire process of Noah challenging the god. If Noah failed, Erica and Liliana would immediately report this matter to the Bronze Cross so that Tony, who was on standby in Rome, could rush over to clean up the mess and avoid causing more trouble. And if Noah was lucky enough to succeed, then the birth of the world's seventh king, who killed a god, would be a big deal, more important than the appearance of the god of disobedience. Naturally, they would need to bring back the information in this regard truthfully. After all, as the demon king that humans could not challenge, the birth of every god slayer meant that the world had one more atomic bomb that could explode at any time. Therefore, the birth of a god slayer had always been the most concerned issue in the world. In this regard, even the god of disobedience was not as important as the god slayer. That was why Erica and Liliana came with Noah, right? Of course, Erica and Liliana's reason was also one of the reasons. There was no doubt about it. Forget it. It's up to you, as long as you think it's okay. Noah paused and said as if nothing had happened. However, since you followed me here, should I treat you as my competitors? Or should I treat you as my companions? We don't mean to disagree with you, Liliana said without hesitation. Since we're here to solve the problem of the god of disobedience, helping the people here to solve their problems is our consensus. So I'll help you. Or rather, whether we're competitors or companions, don't you think it's a good thing to let these two relationships coexist? Erica suddenly smiled in a noble manner. Just as Lily said, we're all here to solve the problem of the god of disobedience, so we should be companions. But in the process, we can show each other our talents and see who's better. Isn't that a wonderful thing? In other words, Noah glanced at Erica and Liliana. It doesn't matter if we're companions or not. You're not the kind of people who would stab me in the back at a critical moment, right? Of course. Liliana frowned. Noah Dole, do you think a knight like me would do such a despicable thing? You can't pretend that you didn't hear that. The smile on Erica's face gradually changed. If it's a duel, it should be fair and square. If you force that kind of undignified method on me, I'll take it as an insult to me. Don't be nervous. I'm just making sure. Noah spread his hands and patted his cheeks. So where should we go next? Seeing that Noah changed the topic, Erica and Liliana didn't want to continue the conversation. They looked at each other and turned their gazes to Noah, who was walking in the middle. The god that appeared on this island appeared in the form of a young man named Wind Follower. He has also been to some ruins on this island, Erica replied. We don't know where that young god is now, because he can transform into Wind Follower. Our helpers on this island have long lost track of him. That's why we have to find God first, Liliana said in a serious tone. That god seems to have been to some ruins. Our destination is there. If I'm lucky, I might be able to find out where that god went through spirit vision. Hearing this, Noah felt relieved. Noah had more or less heard about spirit vision. It was said that it was a special ability that could decipher the mysteries of the world. Sometimes it could even more or less see the future. There was no doubt that this ability had a lot of limitations. First of all, it had to be possessed by someone with a special constitution. Secondly, spirit vision wasn't something that could be activated at will. There was a certain probability of it happening. Therefore, if someone with the ability of spirit vision wanted to decipher any mystery, they would generally try their best to come into contact with this mystery. This could increase the probability of triggering spirit vision. Of course, there was another point. The number of things that could be seen by spirit vision depended on the aptitude of the person with the ability of spirit vision. In addition, it also needed to be random. Liliana had this ability. If Liliana went to the place where the god had been before, it was still possible for her to see the god's whereabouts. Thinking of this, Noah made a decision. Then let's go. Chapter 466. Not long after, night came to Sardinia. For the resort island, night was also a lively time. Therefore, the streets were still crowded. Not only did the number of people not decrease, but it also gradually increased. However, this was no big deal to Noah, Erica, and Liliana, who had walked out of the streets. Perhaps it was because they had been to Sardinia before, or because they had made all the necessary preparations before departure. Erica and Liliana took Noah in a straightforward manner. They took a car and walked. Finally, when it was dark, they arrived in front of a ruin. This was a very dilapidated ruin. Whether it was the walls, stone pillars, or the ground, they all had an ancient aura and a dilapidated appearance. For example, although some walls were carved with many strange patterns, only half of them were left. For example, the stone pillar was directly broken at the waist, and the other half was horizontal between the ground and the stone pillar. Another example was that the ground was also cracked, as if something had broken out of the ground. There was no value in keeping such a ruin. However, the residents of Sardinia seemed to think that it would be bad to tear it down, so they left it here, unused. The god that appeared on this island seems to be looking for something. Erica repeated this sentence that she had heard countless times as she looked around. But would the thing that the god is looking for be in a place like this? The older a place is, the more secrets it must hide. The cleansing of history is not just a saying. Noah came to a broken stone pillar, reached out his hand, and gently stroked the rough surface of the pillar. However, that god obviously didn't find what he was looking for, which is why he's still wandering. He hasn't caused any trouble, right? To humans, the god of disobedience was like a ferocious beast running into the streets. There was no need to mention the danger. After all, the god of disobedience was a god of the opposite path. This kind of god generally had two characteristics. One, paranoia. Because they did not have desires like humans, the god of disobedience would carry out their instincts and duties in an extremely paranoid and crazy way. For example, if a god of war became the god of disobedience, then in order to be able to fight, he would do anything at all costs, including destroying all of humanity. And if the god of disobedience that appeared was the kind of divinity that spread death and plague, then the other party would take this responsibility as the meaning of life, and would not hesitate to turn all the places he passed into hell and death. 2. Unscrupulous. To gods, human lives were like beasts. Even if they killed them, they would not feel any guilt. Just like how humans killed birds, if necessary, the god of disobedience would not hesitate because of human lives. If a hornet's nest in a person's home, he would do his best to get rid of it. Gods were the same. Once God thought that humans were in his way, he would not hesitate to eradicate all humans in his sight. Even if they looked similar, gods and humans they were. Therefore, just as humans could slaughter chickens, ducks, and geese without any guilt, human lives were no different from chickens, ducks, and geese to God. Therefore, once the god of disobedience with such values appeared, it would definitely cause trouble. For this reason, the magic societies in all corners of the world had the obligation to treat the god of disobedience as an enemy in order to protect themselves and others. Not to mention, the existence of gods would also cause all kinds of trouble, which would indirectly affect the world. Now, the god who could turn into a youth and wind had not caused any trouble for the time being, because he was looking for something. However, once he found what he wanted, he would not be able to remain calm. Like Noah and Erica, Liliana was also in the ruins. The girl swayed her silver ponytail, constantly wandering around the ruins and doing all kinds of things. Sometimes she touched the stone wall. Sometimes she put her face on the stone pillar. Sometimes she just lay on the ground and closed her eyes. Sometimes she seemed to be absent-minded, as if she was being pulled by invisible strings, walking back and forth. Seeing Liliana like this, Noah and Erica both kept their mouths shut and did not disturb her. Under such circumstances, Liliana arrived in front of a stone wall at an unknown time. Her pupils suddenly lost focus, but her eyes lit up with a dim light. Youth, wind, guardian of the crown, sun. At the sight of this, Noah and Erica's spirits were lifted at the same time. They quietly came to Liliana's back and watched her silently. Walked to seek victory, and also to seek defeat. Liliana kept murmuring as if in a dream. After a while, the light in her eyes began to dissipate. Her slackened pupils gradually condensed, and her expression became relatively bright. Oh, Erica smiled elegantly. It seems that Lily has discovered something. How is it? Noah asked directly. Did you see anything? Liliana nodded heavily, but her expression became a little distressed. But that's not good news. Hearing this, Noah and Erica looked at each other and nodded. Let's find a hotel first. Noah made a decision decisively. Anyway, it's impossible to find that god today. Let's rest while sorting out the information we got. Liliana hesitated for a moment, but did not object. She nodded in agreement. Just like that, a man and two women walked out of the ruins. On a holiday island like Sardinia, not only were there small stalls and canteens, but there were also high-end restaurants. Noah had only been in this world for less than 4 to 5 days. During these 4 to 5 days, he had been dragged around by Donnie. Naturally, he did not have the money of this world. However, as prodigies of the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross, one of the most famous magic societies in Italy, Erica and Liliana were not short of money. Therefore, under Erica's suggestion, the three chose a hotel with a high-end restaurant. They first ordered food, then listened to Liliana's explanation while filling their stomachs. My spirit vision did see that great existence. Liliana began to explain with a serious expression. That's a god of war for victory. No, it should be said that he himself represents victory, and the guardian of the king and the people, the trusted aid of the sun, the undefeated ancient Persian god of war. The god of victory? Or the guardian of the king and the people, the trusted aid of the sun, and the ancient Persian god of war? Erica was stunned when she heard Liliana say such words. Hey Lily, could that god be? It should be what you think. Liliana sighed. I only saw some fragments, but it's not difficult to guess that person's identity. That's true. Erica frowned and became distressed. After all, that god is very famous. What are you talking about? Noah said unhappily. Unlike you magicians who have learned about gods since young in order to deal with gods, I don't know much about gods. Who are you talking about? We're talking about the ancient Persian god of war, the guardian of the god of light Mitra. Since Mitra is the incarnation of the sun, this god also has a deep relationship with the sun, Liliana explained. He's the invincible god of war with 10 incarnations. In West Asia, he's known as the guardian of light. He has the same origin as India's Thunder Emperor Indra. Not only is he a god of victory, but he's also the guardian of the king and the people. Velislana, Erica finally said the name of that god. Because he's the Persian god of war, you might not know much about him. But this god of victory is no ordinary god. In the myths, he's an undefeated god. Hearing this, Noah frowned. A god of victory? Didn't that mean that if Noah wanted to slay a god, it was equivalent to doing something that no man or god in the myths could do? Was it that difficult? That might be the worst god for you. Liliana seemed to understand Noah's thoughts, but she revealed another piece of news. The most troublesome thing is that now, this god is preparing to summon another god. Chapter 467. Summoning another god? Noah and Erica were both stunned and surprised. My spirit vision did capture it. The ancient Persian god of war is looking for the god sleeping on this island. Liliana's tone was a little heavy. It is precisely because he wants to wake up the god sleeping on this island that the god of war has been wandering around the various ruins of Sardinia. Because he wants to wake up the god, he also left his own curse power in those ruins. That's why I was able to successfully trigger spirit vision. In other words, the reason why the god hasn't made a fuss until now is not because he doesn't want to, but because he wants to make a fuss? Noah said in surprise. Is there no way for humans to satisfy him at this level? If you think about it carefully, it might be possible. Erica frowned deeply. The ancient Persian god of war is known to be invincible. Now that he has become a rebellious god of disobedience, it's not strange that he wants to find an opponent who can fight with him. Fortunately, Sarbatrem, who stayed on this island not long ago, has already left. Otherwise, Velislana's target wouldn't be the god sleeping on this island, but the deicide, Liliana said with a troubled expression on her face. One god is troublesome enough. If Velislana wakes up another god, it will be really bad. Hey Lily. Erica seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly changed the topic. You said that Velislana is trying to awaken the god sleeping on this island, but in the myths, there is only one god who can rival the god of victory, and has a deep relationship with this island. Isn't there only one god? Although I don't want to admit it, my thoughts are the same as yours. Liliana sighed. To be able to catch the eye of the god of war, and have a deep relationship with this island, if I'm not wrong, it should be Mekhl. As soon as this was said, the man and two women, including Noah, fell silent. Noah was not very familiar with Velislana, the god of war from ancient Persia. However, Noah had heard of Mekhl's words before. Or rather, he had read about it in a book. He was the hero god in Canaan mythology. He was the god of the city in the Phoenician port city of Tyre. He was equivalent to Hercules, and the patron god of the voyagers, Maricourts. Tyre was a city built by the Phoenicians. It was also the home port of the Phoenicians, the tyrants of the ancient Mediterranean. However, the Phoenicians were once the rulers of Sardinia. Therefore, the god that the Phoenicians believed in, Mekhl, became the god that had a deep affinity with Sardinia. Mekhl was a god-king who possessed the attributes of wind, lightning, sky, and so on. There were also gods like Zeus and Odin, who were well known as the highest gods. There was no doubt that they were the highest gods. Now, the invincible war god of ancient Persia was planning to awaken the divine king, who could rival him in battle. That would be a disaster for humans. Noah, Erica, and Liliana did not doubt that if the two famous gods were to fight, it was absolutely possible that the entire Sardinia would be affected and sunk. The invincible war god and the highest divine king. Noah felt his head start to hurt. Do we have to make it so difficult? No, it's too early to make a conclusion. Erica shook her head. Velislana hasn't awakened Mekhl yet. Things haven't reached the worst point yet. We still have a way to stop it. The problem is that if we want to stop the war god, there is no doubt that we will have to clash head-on with him. Liliana confirmed with Noah worriedly. Are you sure you can do it? Without Tony's help, Erica and Liliana could only rely on Noah. After all, Noah was the one who really had to deal with the god of disobedience. However, the gods that appeared this time were not ordinary. One of them was the undefeated war god, and the other one had yet to appear. But once he did, he would be at the highest level. He was definitely not below Velislana, the god king. Dealing with these two gods, even if Tony, the god slayer, came, there was a high chance that he would be defeated. And Noah was just an ordinary person. No, it was a bit too much to say that he was an ordinary person. Noah could withstand Tony's magical sword unscathed, and he was stronger than many of the so-called paladins, who stood at the peak of humans in this world. But he was still human after all. Want to fight with the gods? It was not impossible, but it was a matter of whether he could do it in the end. Under Erica and Liliana's gazes, Noah curled his lips into a smile. You know what? A man can't say no. Without giving Erica and Liliana a chance to react, Noah turned his head and asked Liliana, do you know where Velislana is now? As for the specific location, I don't know now. Liliana was startled at first, but then she answered reflexively. However, the war god's purpose is to awaken the divine king Mekhl. As long as he moves, he will definitely emit fluctuations of spell power. I have already used spirit vision to capture Velislana once in that ruin, so as long as he gathers his spell power again, I will sense it. Then there's no problem. Noah's expression relaxed. Let's find Wells Lana first, and then we'll act according to the situation. With that, Noah stood up and said to Erica and Liliana, who were still in a daze, don't worry. It's getting late, and it's time to rest. Tomorrow will be very busy. After saying this, Noah went straight to the counter. Wait. Erica and Liliana woke up and quickly stood up and chased after him. The next day, early morning today, Noah woke up early in the morning. He got up when the sun had just risen. After washing up, Noah walked out of the hotel and looked at the deserted street. After a while, his eyes fixed on a vast square next to the hotel. Yesterday, when Noah, Erica, and Liliana came to this hotel, this vast square was already filled with all kinds of stalls. But now, the sun had just risen, and there were not many people on the street. Naturally, there would not be any stalls in this square. And this square just happened to be Noah's target. Coming to this square, Noah closed his eyes and took a deep breath of fresh air. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. Boom! Surging blue flames centered on the star pattern that suddenly appeared on Noah's chest. It suddenly burned and turned into a pitch-black knight's sword, falling into Noah's hand. Holding the knight's sword tightly, Noah raised it in front of him and pointed the tip of the sword forward, as if aiming at an invisible enemy. He began to concentrate. In the battle against the gods, Noah could only rely on the two weapons in his soul, because whether it was the god slayer or the god of disobedience, they both had an extremely foul physique. The nullification of magic. No, not just magic. Spells, yin-yang spells, and so on. As long as they were used against the god slayer and the god of disobedience, they would all be nullified, even if they were beneficial spells such as healing and support. In other words, the magic and spells that Noah mastered could not be used against the god slayer and the god of disobedience, unless it was a magic that worked on himself like the enhancement magic. Otherwise, as long as it was used against the gods, it would be nullified. In this way, Noah's strength was equivalent to wasting more than half, and he could only rely on the two weapons in his soul and his own skills. This was quite a disadvantageous situation, and it also made Noah realize how foul the god slayer and the god of disobedience were. However, there was no turning back. Since he had decided, Noah would not go back on his words. If he wanted to obtain authority and become a god slayer, he would not have the consciousness to risk his life. It was better to go home early, wash up, and sleep. What Noah could do was to race against time to strengthen the cards that he could use. At this time, a voice sounded from behind Noah. Is that your sword? Hearing this, Noah's hand movements stopped and looked behind him. He saw that Liliana, who was dressed in a blue and black formal dress, walked towards Noah with a proper posture, and a trace of curiosity appeared on her usually serious face. Do you want to compete with me? Chapter 468. Would you like to have a duel with me? While saying that, Liliana's eyes began to burn with passion. I, Liliana Kranikar, request an audience with your sword, the Grand Knight of the Bronze Black Cross, whom even Minister Sarbatrii praised. At this moment, Liliana's voice was full of provocation, just like Erica's. From this provocation, Noah didn't sense any hostility, but her fighting spirit was awe-inspiring. Noah had heard this tone from Erica more than once in the past few days. And the reason why Erica used this tone was obvious to Noah, even if he used his knees to guess. It was because only two people in the entire Italy had achieved the rank of Grand Knight when they were still underage. Erica and Liliana were known as prodigies by the relevant people in the magic world. It wasn't difficult to understand why Erica would be so confident after achieving such an achievement when she was still underage. For such a talented prodigy, how could she easily admit that others were better than her? However, Noah's excellence was beyond doubt, because he as an ordinary human blocked the power of a god slayer. If Noah were an old man in his 70s or 80s, Erica and Liliana would definitely not mind Noah, who had achieved such an achievement. Unfortunately, Noah was only a young man who wasn't even 20 years old. In terms of age, Noah was only 3 to 4 years older than Erica and Liliana. However, a person who was only 3 to 4 years older than them had achieved something that even the holy knights, who had the highest honor and rank, couldn't do, which stimulated Erica's and Liliana's self-confidence. Under such circumstances, it was only natural that Erica would constantly use a provocative tone to talk to Noah, in an attempt to prove herself. At first, Noah thought that Liliana didn't care about this, but now it seemed that Liliana was just not as unscrupulous as Erica. She also had the intention to challenge Noah. In this regard, Noah just stared at Liliana's eyes that were full of fighting spirit. After a while, the corners of his mouth curled up. Well, it's not a bad idea to treat it as a morning exercise. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Liliana's eyes flashed, and she stretched out her hand in the direction of Noah. My wings, the steel that forms the phantom blades. Silver Master Alchemist, bestow me strength. When such an incantation sounded, a glimmer of light emerged on Liliana's slender body, and turned into a weapon that fell into her hand. It was a silver-white saber. Whoosh! With a sudden swing of the saber in her hand, Liliana assumed an attacking posture while her eyes were fixed on Noah. Nice to meet you. Likewise. Compared to Liliana's extremely ornamental posture, Noah just lightly raised the knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at Liliana. Come on. You can attack at will. This sentence sounded like he was looking down on his opponent, but Liliana did not feel angry at all. Instead, her expression was solemn. It was not the first time that Liliana saw such a casual posture, without tensing up his body. Italy's King of Swords was almost the same after drawing his sword. He did not assume any stance, just relaxed his body, and the right hand holding the sword drooped down casually. Anyone who had seen Salbardoni's swordsmanship would know how frightening that seemingly unprofessional and belittling stance was. Because if there was no stance, it meant that any move could be derived. Doni did not need any offensive or defensive stance. His swordsmanship had already been completely integrated with his body. Even if he had lost all his memories, once he fought, that amazing swordsmanship could still be performed by relying on his body's memory. Therefore, Doni's stance was useful even when fighting against an extraordinary enemy like God. It was truly a realm where he did not need any moves to adapt to the situation. The East called this realm, having no moves is better than having moves. Liliana, who had seen this realm, saw that although Noah was not sloppy, he was more casual and relaxed than Doni. Naturally, all the vigilance in her heart exploded. Sure enough, in terms of swordsmanship, he's already comparable to Sal Barlet. Liliana's expression became more and more solemn, but the scorching heat in her eyes became more and more intense. However, this is what makes the challenge meaningful. As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at Noah, who was casually standing in front of her. She slowly clenched the silver Grandmaster Craftsman sword in her hand, and a faint spell power quickly flowed on the surface of her body, giving Liliana a sense of tyrannical power. Hey dash! With a clear shout, Liliana tapped the ground with the tip of her toes and charged straight at Noah, who was close at hand. She slightly bent her wrist, and the blade of the military knife in her hand glowed with a cold light. When she was only half a meter away from Noah, she suddenly stopped and drew a tricky arc in front of Noah. Chi! Like a flash of silver light, Liliana's military knife turned into lightning and shot straight at Noah's direction. Looking at the incoming military knife, Noah just raised his hand unhurriedly and pointed the knight sword in his hand. Ding! In the next moment, the tip of the pitch-black knight's sword accurately hit the tip of Liliana's military saber. With a crisp sound, the military saber was pushed back. Clang! The sudden force acting on the military knife made Liliana's body feel as if she was hit by something. She instantly retreated more than 10 steps, and after a while, she stopped her body awkwardly. Liliana's expression changed. She gritted her teeth and mixed some cursed power with the military knife in her hand. Her body rushed toward Noah again. The military knife turned into a flash of silver light and suddenly stabbed out. Ding! Another crisp sound rang out. But this time, The tip of Liliana's military knife accurately pointed at the tip of the pitch-black knight sword that Noah had not yet retracted. Perhaps Liliana wanted to return an eye for an eye. However, Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. His hand that was holding the sword suddenly turned and retracted, pulling the knight sword back. Then something strange happened. Liliana's silver grandmaster craftsman seemed to be directly attracted by Noah's knight sword. As Noah retracted the knight sword, Liliana and her sword were pulled over. Wadash! Liliana's heart skipped a beat. Her feet subconsciously gripped the ground, but her body still drew an arc in the air and crashed straight into Noah. Then, looking at Noah who was getting closer and closer to her, Liliana's gaze turned cold. She simply gave up resisting and let her body crash into Noah's direction. The curse power in her body quickly condensed on her palm and quickly gathered on the silver grandmaster craftsman. If you can't resist, then attack. With a cold shout, Liliana's body turned, and she fiercely tightened the military knife in her hand. Accompanied by a sharp wind-breaking sound, she fiercely slashed toward Noah's shoulder. Feeling the sharp wind coming toward him, Noah's hand tightened. The knight sword suddenly slashed out like a meteor, and once again accurately pointed at Liliana's silver grandmaster craftsman. Ding! This time, it was on the blade of the silver grandmaster craftsman. A violent force gushed out along with Noah's stab, causing the tip of the knight sword to ignite a spark on the blade of the silver grandmaster craftsman. An invisible repulsive force fiercely hit Liliana's silver grandmaster craftsman. After a moment of stalemate, it rushed toward Liliana's direction like a shock wave. Bang! Liliana only felt a huge force coming from the silver grandmaster craftsman. Her body was shocked by the repulsive force, and she slid more than 10 meters on the ground, leaving a long shoe print on the ground. Ha! Ha! Liliana could not help but gasp. First, she glanced at Noah, who did not even move from his position. Then she looked at her trembling hand that was holding the knife. Her eyes fluctuated. So strong. This person is so strong. Maybe he can really. How is it? Noah raised his eyebrows. Still wanna go? Hearing this, Liliana's expression became uncertain. In the end, she sighed and shook her head. I lost. Noah smiled. Chapter 469. Here. After buying the cold drinks from the small stall that had just been set up, Noah walked towards Liliana, who was sitting on the bench in the square, and passed one of the bottles to her. Although it's not a strenuous exercise, it's better to drink it. Hearing this, Liliana looked at the cold drink in front of her. After hesitating for a while, she nodded her head. Accepting gifts from others without any reason is not something that a knight should do. However, since it's done out of goodwill, it's a different story. I'll accept it with gratitude. After speaking like an honest and upright official in the face of a bribe, Liliana politely reached out her hand and took the cold drink in Noah's hand, while Noah was at a loss of whether to laugh or cry. Perhaps because she was too concerned about whether she should accept it or not. Liliana's hand accidentally touched Noah's hand. Suddenly, Liliana opened her eyes wide and blushed. She quickly retracted her hand. Seeing this, Noah tilted his head and asked curiously, "What are you doing?" No, nothing. Liliana replied loudly, giving Noah a shock. What's wrong with this girl all of a sudden? Little did he know that Liliana seemed to have thought of something and looked at Noah shyly. Could it be that you deliberately did this to me for this purpose? Noah was at a loss. What purpose? What do you mean? Just. Liliana seemed to be very nervous as she twisted her hand. She lowered her head and said shyly, "To touch my hand, give me water." What? Liliana's voice was too soft. Noah frowned and subconsciously moved his head closer to her. Say that again? Looking at Noah's head that suddenly moved closer, Liliana shouted and jumped up. She pulled a distance away from Noah and pointed at Noah with a flushed face and shouted, "What are you trying to do?" The corner of Noah's mouth twitched as he looked at Liliana, whose beautiful face was flushed and her eyes were moist. However, she was looking at him warily. It was said that geniuses were generally weird. Could it be that Liliana was a typical example? If Noah knew that Liliana had such a series of reactions because she touched Noah's hand, he would be even more speechless. Was there a need to have such a strong reaction? Was it better to be pure? Or was it better to be too sensitive? Of course, Noah would never have imagined that Liliana would have such a reaction. It was all because she was too delusional. Although I don't know what's wrong with you. Noah rolled his eyes speechlessly. But if you don't want to interact with me, then I'll go back. No, it's not like that. Liliana finally calmed down. While feeling ashamed of her excessive behavior just now, she pretended to be calm. I'm sorry. There was an accident just now. Please don't mind. After saying that, Liliana returned to her seat on the bench and sat down. She stared at the cold drink in Noah's hand, and immediately reached out her hand to snatch the cold drink from him at lightning speed. I will accept your kindness. That's good. Noah really didn't know what to say. What was certain was that Liliana didn't seem to be as rigid as she looked on the surface. Instead, there was a very strange part of her. With a new understanding of Liliana, Noah sat down next to Liliana. Looking at the bustling street ahead, he asked very casually, "You're up so early? Where's Miss Erica?" "Don't compare me with her." Liliana, who was still in the state of a young girl a second ago, was suddenly stimulated. She regained her usual solemn and awe-inspiring manner, and even declared, "Unlike those who lays in bed every day, as a knight, I have strict requirements for my work and rest schedule. Under normal circumstances, I won't change my work and rest schedule at will. I didn't know that Miss Erica would lays in bed." Noah curled his lips. "Sometimes, I really feel that you two are indeed childhood sweethearts." His words made Liliana frown very obviously. She said in a very resistant manner, "That's right. I don't understand why you think so. Isn't it?" Noah replied, "Both of you are known as prodigies in the magic world. But as knights, one is obviously willful and casual, while the other is obviously strict and inflexible. From an extreme perspective, don't you feel that you two are compatible?" Liliana's face instantly turned gloomy. If your childhood sweetheart invites you to watch a horror movie when you want to watch a movie, or happily eats desserts in front of you when you want to lose weight, you won't think so. He felt that the topic had become heavy all of a sudden. To what extent was this seductive female knight persecuted by that willful Miss Erica? At the thought of this, Noah could not help but feel pity for Liliana. He quickly laughed and drank his cold drink. "Oh yeah, what was that sword move just now?" Liliana seemed to have the intention to change the topic. Her expression became serious. "That sword move that attracted my Grandmaster Silver Craftsman and pulled me over. Was it some kind of magic?" "That's not magic. It's just a simple technique." Noah shrugged. "The trick is in the control of strength. This is the application of using softness to overcome hardness and leveraging strength to counter strength. You should be able to understand. That sword move contains such a great mystery." Liliana looked at Noah blankly. After a while she sighed. "It seems that I still underestimated your ability. I've seen a sword skill that even Ching Ching is inferior to. Noah Doria, you are indeed a person who is more talented than Ching Ching in swordsmanship." Italy's king of swords was a rare genius who did not know anything other than swordsmanship. This was something that everyone knew. This king didn't know anything about magic, spells, or anything like that, but he had an extraordinary obsession with swords. If it was just a competition of swords, even if one didn't take into account power, it was impossible to find a match for him in the whole of Italy. In this aspect, being able to be comparable to the King of Swords meant that Noah's swordsmanship was unparalleled in the entire Italy, and even the entire world. But if you want to kill a god, you can't do it with just strength. Liliana changed the topic. She looked straight at the gradually bustling street in front of her, and said solemnly without looking back, "Even if you can surpass Qing in swordsmanship, the second King of Swords is not so easy to be born. What's more, the god that appeared this time is the god of war who represents victory. It is also very likely that the King of Gods of the Mediterranean Sea will be involved." Liliana turned her head and looked straight at Noah. "Even so, you still think that you can succeed?" Noah drank the cold drink silently. After drinking all the drink in the bottle, he threw it away casually. The empty bottle drew a perfect parabola in the air and fell accurately into a trash can. Perhaps, in your eyes, a guy like me who takes the initiative to challenge a god and even wants to kill a god is like an idiot who overestimates himself, right? Noah smiled indifferently. But such an idiot. Didn't the 6 god slayers whom you respect as kings used to be like that in the past? Liliana was speechless. Since it's not something that's absolutely impossible, it's still too early to make such a judgment. Noah turned his head and met Liliana's gaze. His dark and deep eyes were shining brightly. It's just like how you know that I'm stronger than you, but you still challenge me. I'm just exaggerating the same thing by a few levels. Regardless of whether I succeed or fail in the end, at least I have the confidence to keep my life. Since that's the case, why don't I challenge you once? Noah's dark and deep eyes stared at Noah closely. Looking at his face that was close at hand, and listening to his somewhat handsome speech, Liliana felt her heart beating a little faster. Her pretty face blushed again. Rumble! At this moment, a shocking thunder suddenly sounded in the sky, startling Noah, Liliana, and everyone on the street. The originally clear sky was suddenly covered by a thick layer of clouds, becoming incomparably dark. Dazzling flashes of lightning flashed within, and the sound of thunder constantly rang out. Chapter 470. Rumble. The shocking sound of thunder continued to reverberate in the thick clouds. Thick bolts of lightning were like meteors colliding with each other. They flashed in the thick dark clouds and rolled back and forth, causing the sky to become extremely oppressive. The residents and tourists on the streets who thought that it was going to rain began to rush in the direction of their homes or hotels. Those who were setting up their stalls and preparing to make a fortune today were grumbling, as they quickly packed up their stalls and walked away. Not long after, there were only a few passers-by, and Noah and Liliana, who didn't move at all in the square and the entire street. A man and a woman stood under the gloomy and cold sky, looking up at the scene where the sky that was clear not long ago suddenly became like the end of the world. Their expressions turned solemn. Noah Dole. Liliana's palms began to sweat unknowingly, but her voice was still as stern as ever. Do you feel it? At this level, if you still can't feel it, you can really go home, wash up and sleep. Noah stared at the dark sky and narrowed his eyes. This is not a simple storm. There is an extremely large amount of cursed power gathering in the clouds. In other words, it was not a natural phenomenon, but a man-made phenomenon. No, it was impossible for an ordinary person to cause such a phenomenon that was thicker than a normal storm. Affecting the weather was not something that could be done by ordinary power. Therefore, whether it was Noah or Liliana, they could only think of one possibility. God. Liliana's eyes glowed with a faint light. I see it. It's God's power that is affecting the weather. Is it Welslana? Noah immediately asked. Does the ever-victorious god of war also have the power to cause such a phenomenon? The ancient Persian god of war, the god of victory, often incarnated into 10 forms in myths and traveled between heaven and the human world. Perhaps because the wind was getting stronger, Liliana began to raise her voice. Strong wind, bull, white horse, camel, mountain boar, young man, phoenix, shepherd, goat, and human warrior with a golden sword. There are a total of 10 incarnations, and each incarnation has a different power. Among these 10 incarnations, the goat incarnation can summon lightning and thunder. If this phenomenon was caused by Welslana, then now, the god of war should be using the goat incarnation. Liliana's face showed a hint of uneasiness as she said this. However, to be able to affect the weather to such an extent, without a certain degree of control over the sky, and there's the storm. This was beyond the reach of the power of Welslana's goat incarnation. Liliana didn't say it out loud, but Noah could understand it. Storm, sky, lightning, Noah said in a monotonous voice. It seems that we have to prepare for the appearance of another god. The moment he finished speaking, a surge of power that was more powerful than the power gathered in the sky rose from the direction of the seaside. Over there. Liliana pointed in the direction of the huge surge of curse power and shouted. God is there. Even without Liliana's reminder, Noah could guess it. Noah had only seen such a large amount of power from himself and Tony. He had never seen a third person who could gather such a large amount of power. This level of curse power could only be possessed by the god that appeared on this island. There was no other possibility for this level of curse power. Lily. At this moment, a voice came from the direction of the hotel. Electra, who was dressed in a red and black outfit that was not far off from Liliana's, walked toward Noah and Liliana with a smile as fierce as a lion's on her face. It's time for the duel. Against the storm, Noah and Liliana were flying in the sky. They turned into two streams of light and flew toward the seaside. Noah used the death feather form of the magician. What Liliana used was a witch spell called flight. Erica, who could not use the witch spell, was in Liliana's arms. Unlike magic, witches were magic that could only be used by pure witches. While Liliana Kranikar was a knight, she was also a witch. In the world of magic, the title of witch had great significance. Erica was also a witch in a broad sense. To be more precise, she was a female magician who used magic. There was a difference between a pure magician and a witch. Erica was only a magician who could use magic, while Liliana was the last descendant of those witches and priestesses who became saintesses in the beginning of the era. Just like Awezi and Yuju, one could only use magic, while the other had the bloodline of a witch. The difference naturally arose. The witch spell referred to the magic that only pure-blooded witches could use. The knowledge and magic that belonged to witches were passed down orally by Liliana from the previous generation of witches. Only Liliana, the last descendant of a witch, could use the spells. Under such circumstances, the three of them flew in the direction of the sea, braving the strong winds. In the next second, Noah, Erica, and Liliana saw it. They saw a giant. It was a giant with messy, fluffy hair, and a beard that covered the lower half of his face. He looked rather wild and unruly, and was more than 20 meters tall. On the giant's body, muscles bulged constantly. Just by looking at him, one would feel that he was very bold. He wore rough clothes. His clothes were made of dirty rags and leather. However, not only did this appearance not give people a disheveled and dirty feeling, on the contrary, it could make people involuntarily feel a sense of majesty. Just looking at it would make people want to lower their heads and retreat in an extremely oppressive manner. On the other side of the giant, a 14 or 15-year-old boy, who was even smaller than an average adult, hovered in midair and confronted the giant fearlessly. The young man's clothes were not so much the clothes of this harbor street, but more like the clothes he wore in the oasis in the desert. He was dressed in ancient Roman attire. His jet-black hair reached his shoulders, and his skin was ivory. The young man was very good-looking, and his facial features were very regular. There was even a bit of a neutral feeling. He was a beautiful young man, who couldn't be picked out at all. However, not only did this beautiful young man violate Newton's law and hover in midair, but his cloak also fluttered in the strong wind. His body also surged with an aura that wasn't any weaker than that of the giant. This told others that he wasn't an ordinary person who couldn't even truss up a chicken. The two figures, one big and one small, confronted each other in the ocean. The aura that gushed out of their bodies like a storm not only covered the entire ocean and sky, but also swept in all directions, shrouding Noah, Erica, and Liliana who were flying over. Almost at the same time, Noah, Erica, and Liliana came to a sudden halt and froze in midair. Under the shroud of the terrifying aura, Erica and Liliana were completely immobilized. Not only were their eyes and faces full of horror, but even their foreheads were dripping with cold sweat. These two prodigies didn't seem to have any experience facing the gods. Now that they had encountered the two gods of the highest level, the aura that leaked out was enough to awe the two genius girls on the spot. Noah was the only one who maintained his composure, but his expression was still solemn. He glanced at Erica and Liliana, took a deep breath, and suddenly spoke. "If you want to retreat, this is your last chance." Upon hearing that, Erica's and Liliana's pretty faces changed drastically. Humiliation, powerlessness, and anger at themselves. All kinds of emotions made these two talented girls bite their teeth and lips hard. Immediately Erica said loudly, "I'm Erica Brantery." Liliana also spoke with a determined expression. "As a knight, I'm absolutely not allowed to abandon my companions and retreat." "Is that so?" Noah closed his eyes and suddenly opened them after a while. "Then let's begin. To slay the gods." Chapter 471. Crackle, crackle. In the dark clouds, the sound of lightning and thunder continued to reverberate. Wallala! No one knew when it started, but the violent winds and torrential rain had also affected Sardinia, bringing about a weather phenomenon no less than a level 10 typhoon. Under such a vile environment, the tall giant and the young man floating in the air continued to face each other with calm expressions. They did not care about the vile weather and torrential rain at all. They were as unmoving as a mountain, and the aura emitted from their bodies was even more frightening than the torrential rain. Mekr, one of the strongest gods in the Mediterranean Sea, the king of the gods, the great warrior, the strongest dragon slayer, we finally meet. In the violent winds, the young man faced the giant that covered the sky. Not only did he not show the slightest trace of fear, but he also showed an extremely joyful and unruly look. "I am Welslana, I am the victor. Victory is always in my hands. This is my essence. No matter what battle I encounter, no matter what enemy I face, my victory will not change and cannot be shaken. That is why I have not experienced the taste of defeat until now, because no one can defeat me." With such an arrogant declaration that seemed to be able to shake the heavens and earth, the god of victory named Welslana laughed, his face full of arrogance. "God King Mekr, can you grant me a defeat?" As soon as the words came out, the tall giant immediately lowered his head and looked at Welslana, who was floating in the air not far from him. He let out a cold snort that could cause the sea to churn. "Welslana, the guardian of Mitra, as the god of light who used to protect the royal power, you actually dared to challenge me, the king. You deserve to die 10,000 times. Indeed, I used to be the guardian of the people and the royal power, but now I am only the god of disobedience. What remains in this body is only the will to fight and win." Welslana smiled calmly, but his expression was still full of arrogance. "Mekr, satisfy me. Give me a fight that can calm the will to fight in my body." "Ha ha ha ha." Mekr couldn't help but laugh out loud. His laughter was deafening, and the sound waves even blew away the surrounding storm. Speaking of which, this old man is now Bodeo's god of disobedience. Although I'm a king, I'm also a warrior. I'm a dragon slayer, the god of victory. Let my staff smash your arrogant face." As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of crude clubs appeared in Mekr's hands. They were a pair of sticks that appeared amidst the storm and lightning. Although its appearance was extremely crude, the wind and lightning flashing back and forth on it brought about waves of fluctuations, causing the space to tremble. "Ha ha ha ha." Welslana also laughed out loud because of his excessive excitement. The cloak behind him fluttered, and an extremely terrifying curse power rose with his petite body as the center. "Come on, the king of the Mediterranean." The heavy atmosphere in the air exploded at the slightest touch, just as the ever-victorious war god and the king of gods were about to engage in a devastating battle. A slightly frivolous voice rang out. "If that's the case, can you count me in?" The voice was very soft, so soft that it was covered by the storm in less than a second. However, whether it was Welslana or Mekl, they were not ordinary people. They were the highest gods in the myths, so naturally they couldn't miss it. At that moment, Welslana and Mekl both stopped what they were doing and turned their heads to look in the direction of the island. There, in midair, a figure with two pairs of light wings made of black light behind his back braved the storm and entered the eyes of the two gods. Welslana was slightly startled and said in surprise, "Human? Human?" Mekl's voice sounded like thunder, and his sharp gaze was directly cast. "A mere human. How dare you appear in front of us gods?" The moment he was stared at by Welslana and Mekl, Noah felt as if his whole body was wrapped by an invisible pressure, and his body was constantly being pulled down. Velislana was the guardian of the people and the royal authority. Although he was not the king, he represented the royal authority itself. In addition to the great cause of protecting the people, he could make all humans accept his protection and make them submit at the same time. Mekhl was the king of gods and the former king of the Mediterranean. He also had the power to make humans submit. The two of them were the highest gods in all aspects. Now they were aiming their auras at Noah. Even if they didn't deliberately use their power, their auras and words were enough to make humans kneel down and submit to them. Unfortunately, Noah was not an ordinary human. Like Erica and Liliana, Noah had no experience of facing a god directly. However, Noah had seen Gaia and Aleia, who were even more majestic than gods. In addition, in the past few days, he had been fighting with the god-slayer, Tony, who was on par with the gods. Coupled with the countless battles he had experienced in the past, and the temperament he had cultivated since childhood, it was impossible to make Noah submit with just their auras. Therefore, under the monstrous auras of the two gods, Noah only felt his shoulders sink. After circulating the magic in his body, he recovered. He was not affected at all. Oh, Velislana raised an eyebrow, and his tone began to have a hint of curiosity. What an amazing Dochi. You seem to be a brave warrior as well. So, I'm here to challenge you. It was unknown when Noah had grasped a completely black knight's sword in his hand. He raised it and pointed it in the direction of the two gods, declaring loudly, "The two of you, do you want to fight with me?" The whole place was suddenly silent. A heavy pressure spread out in the space, covering the entire world in an instant. "You actually pointed your sword at me, the king of the gods?" Mekhl's voice had a hint of majesty and anger. "Human, are you ready to atone for your sins with your death? You have the courage to challenge a god, but you should consider your own strength, boy." Velislana glanced at Noah and smirked. "In front of you is the god of victory, who is always victorious. Human, you should back down." Seeing that the two gods treated his actions as an offense instead of a challenge, Noah felt helpless even though he had expected it. "Since you are a god who represents victory, then you should know what causes defeat on the battlefield, right?" Noah looked directly at Velislana and said with a hint of provocation, "I am indeed just a human, but I have power. Since I have power, then I have the qualifications to fight. I did not come here to compete with you in terms of status, nor to compete with you in terms of strength. I only have one goal, and that is to win. Aren't you the god of victory? Aren't you looking for defeat?" Noah's voice kept echoing. It penetrated the storm and drilled into Velislana's ears. "Then let's fight. I will use any means necessary. I will let you taste the taste of defeat." Hearing this, Velislana widened his eyes slightly and looked at Noah, who was stirring up a large amount of magic. He suddenly laughed, and laughed very happily. "Good. I didn't expect a human to know the true meaning of victory. As the god of war who is always victorious, I can't ignore the challenge of a warrior who pursues victory. Come with me." Knowing that his provocation was successful, Noah controlled the magician behind him, and his body turned into a stream of light and swept in another direction. "My strength is weaker than yours, so I will choose a terrain that is advantageous to me to fight with you. Everything is for victory. If you are afraid, you can choose not to come." With that, Noah's body quickly disappeared into the storm. Velislana's face was filled with joy. His body suddenly turned into a tornado and swept in the direction where Noah disappeared. "Human, god of war, are you trying to abandon me, the king?" Mekhl shouted angrily. "Unforgivable." As soon as he finished speaking, Mekhl's huge body turned into a flash of lightning and swept into the sky and disappeared. It was only then that Liliana, who was carrying Erica, leaped from the direction of the beach. This way, no matter how fierce the battle is, at least nothing will happen to this island. Liliana looked at Erica. "What should we do next?" "Follow him," Erica answered without hesitation. "We must witness this battle." Liliana nodded heavily and flew into the sky. Chapter 472. Whoosh! Accompanied by a sharp sound, Noah turned into a stream of light under the push of the magician in the form of Death Feather. He flashed through space and shot toward the endless sea. Noah didn't look behind him, nor did he check if his target was following him. Noah flew forward as fast as he could while in the Death Feather form. At the same time, he activated his sensing ability to scan the surrounding sea surface. Not long after, Noah opened his eyes and looked at a small island in front of him. It was an uninhabited island. If gods like Welslana and Mekhl went all out, sinking an island wouldn't be a difficult task. Although Noah didn't think that the two highest-level gods would go all out against him, other than being provoked by him, they were also each other's opponents. It was too dangerous for two gods to fight head-on. Therefore, Noah used a trick to lure Welslana and Mekhl over. As for the uninhabited island, it was the perfect place to fight with the gods. At that moment, Noah made up his mind. The tip of the magician's wings in the form of Death Feather spurted out a large amount of black light, making the wings of light bigger and more solid. It pushed Noah and shot toward the uninhabited island. After a while, Noah came to the sky above the uninhabited island. He swooped down and landed heavily on the beach. Bang! The rough landing made a muffled sound on the beach, and sand flew everywhere. Noah, who was standing on the beach, raised his head and looked in front of him. Whoosh! A gust of strong wind appeared out of nowhere and slowly swirled around, turning into the appearance of a 14 or 15-year-old boy. So this is the battlefield you've chosen? The war god, who had never lost a battle, scanned his surroundings with ease. It doesn't look like a trap, but maybe there's something I haven't noticed. Yes, it's an advantageous terrain if it's not discovered by the enemy. If it's discovered, it's just a weakness. Can you give me defeat here, brat? Before Noah could answer, the sky was suddenly covered by a thick layer of dark clouds. Boom! A deafening clap of thunder rang out, and a bolt of lightning descended from the sky. It landed on the sea beside Noah and Welslana, and while it stirred up huge waves, it slowly turned into a tall giant. Human, or god. The divine king with the crude staff let out a thunderous roar. Making a fool out of me as a king is a crime. You will pay with your lives. Ha 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 ha. As if he was delighted by the upcoming battle, Welslana laughed out loud. Against the warrior who pursues victory, and the king of the gods. Interesting. Interesting. I can finally feel my blood boiling. After saying that, Welslana's eyes stared at Noah, and his smile became ferocious because of his excessive enthusiasm for battle. On the battlefield, it's common sense to eliminate the weak in advance. Kid, let's start with you. As soon as the words fell, Welslana turned into a gust of wind and rushed in the direction of Noah. Noah's eyes narrowed, and the light wings behind him shook. His body forcibly twisted, and just as he was about to retreat, the gust of wind surged out in an extremely strange manner. Like an invisible rope, it wrapped around Noah like lightning. Welslana has 10 incarnations. Among them, the incarnation of strong wind can cause tornadoes. The speed of the gust of wind was extremely fast, and it caught up with Noah in the blink of an eye. Like a silkworm cocoon, it wrapped Noah in it. Poof! However, in the next second, a slight sound echoed. In the gust of wind, a figure shot out and rushed out of the range of the gust of wind. Oh! In the rolling gust of wind, Welslana's voice slowly sounded. You are indeed brave and skilled in battle. If this was in ancient times, I would have bestowed you with divine protection and allowed you to enter the battlefield for my constant victories. Now continue to display your martial prowess in front of me. Suddenly, the gust of wind quickly rose into the air and swept straight in the direction of Noah. Hearing the sound of the wind coming from below, Noah hurriedly lowered his head, and immediately his expression changed. The light wings behind him flapped, and his figure quickly retreated. Although temporarily retreating for victory is not a cowardly act, blindly retreating is too boring. Human, don't let me down. The speed of the gust of wind immediately increased again, and in the blink of an eye, it blew in front of Noah. Looking at the approaching gust of wind, Noah remained silent and just flapped his wings to escape. In the sky above the beach of the uninhabited island, a figure and a gust of wind were chasing each other. and the distance between the two was rapidly closing. At this time, the anger in the heart of another god had reached its limit. Human, military god, you dare to ignore me, a king? Mekar angrily attacked. Whoosh! The stick in his hand seemed to turn into an illusory flash of lightning, and Mekar swung it out like a windmill. With the momentum of Mount Tai, in the midst of the heavy explosion, it brought a sharp force that made Noah's skin prickle and smashed down on Noah's body. Although Mekar's body was huge, his speed was as fast as lightning. By the time Noah noticed the attack, the gigantic cudgel that seemed to blot out the sky was already less than half a meter away from him. Whong! Just as Mekar's attack was about to land on Noah's body, Noah's bandaged arm suddenly burst with a bright golden light. Roar! Amidst a resounding roar that seemed to come from ancient memories, a golden beast shot out from the golden light. Like a meteor, it viciously slammed into the descending cudgel. Dong! The terrifying sound of the collision shook the air, causing a burst of sharp explosions, and caused a violent shock wave. Suddenly, Mekar's stick was forcibly pushed back, and the golden beast was like a rubber ball that had been slapped away, rapidly falling to the ground. This sudden turn of events caused Welslana and Mekar, who had turned into a gust of wind to chase after Noah, to stop and look down. Over there, the golden wolf, whose beautiful fur fluttered in the wind. Her entire body seemed to be surrounded by golden light as she stood there with an indomitable spirit. Her entire body reflected the golden light, and at a glance, she was extremely beautiful and noble. The golden wolf was naturally Bio, who had been sleeping in Noah's body all this time. Facing the two gods of disobedience, Noah was not arrogant enough to think that he could deal with them alone. So when Mekar joined the battle, Noah did not hesitate to release Bio. Bio's appearance surprised both Welslana and Mekar. A divine beast. It doesn't seem to be one. To be able to block the attack of the divine king, its power has already surpassed that of a divine beast. Welslana's surprised voice sounded from the gust of wind. A beast that isn't a divine beast actually has that kind of power? Mekar, who had used the identity of Baal to kill the dragon king Yamu, could see that Bio was not simple, but he still spoke angrily. Do you want to challenge me, the dragon hunter? Roar! Bio raised his emerald eyes and stared at the tall giant. With a long roar, his body suddenly shone with golden light. As the golden light bloomed, Bio's body was like an inflated balloon, rapidly expanding. Originally, he was only half the size of a human, but in a moment, he had become a monster that was even bigger than Mekar. As his body grew larger, a vigorous golden light slowly overflowed from Bio's body, causing the space around Bio to ripple like water. Welslana was surprised at first, but then he smiled happily. Like me, you have the ability to change your body at will? Bio was a fantasy breed that was born from miracles, fantasies, and mysteries. Its form was not fixed, so it could indeed change into various forms like Welslana. Roar! After transforming into a gigantic body, Bio's originally bewitching gem-like beast eyes finally had some of the ferocity that originally belonged to him. He opened his gigantic mouth, and with a resounding roar, he pounced towards the similarly gigantic Mekar. Bio was a true immortal. It definitely wouldn't be a problem for him to entangle Mekar. Chapter 473. Looking at Bio, who was rushing towards Mekal, Noah's wings of light flapped behind him. After retreating a distance, he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was still Bio. Otherwise, no matter how confident Noah was, he wouldn't dare to say that he could kill one of the gods in a battle between two of the highest-level gods. On the shore of the uninhabited island, the huge man and beast finally collided. Ha! With a roar, Mekar raised his hand and swung the huge stick in his hand. It cut through the void, leaving a long afterimage in the space. Roar! The moment Mekal made his move, Bio also suddenly raised his head and let out a loud and resounding roar. His huge body directly collided with Mekal. After a moment, under Noah's gaze, the man and beast collided with a loud bang. Dong! At the moment of collision, a thunderous explosion resounded through the sky, As soon as he came into contact with Bio, Mekar adopted his most ferocious close combat style. The pair of rods in his hands were as thick as mountains, and as he waved them around, they brought about a series of sharp sounds as they broke through the air. Gales and flashes of lightning appeared as he continuously attacked Bio. Although Bio's body had become bigger, his speed hadn't decreased at all. Instead, it gave him an extremely large amount of power. As he collided with Mekal, his terrifying power seemed to break through the void. He rushed towards Mekal again and again, entangling with Mekal. Suddenly, the entire sea was like boiling water under the collision of the man and beast. It rolled back and forth, causing waves to explode. Welslana had returned to the appearance of a teenager. Welslana, who had the power to transform into 10 different avatars, now had the appearance of a teenager. Not only was he a human, but he also had the appearance of a 15-year-old teenager. It was one of Welslana's 10 avatars, the avatar of a teenager. In order to maintain the order of the chaotic world, in the legends, Welslana liked to use the avatar of a teenager when he was fighting against the enemy gods. This was because among the people and royalty that Welslana protected, this avatar was the symbol of a hero. Under this incarnation, Welslana could obtain the power of protection and domination. Thus, when the huge waves stirred up by the fierce battle between Mekar and Bio surged in his direction, Welslana shouted softly, "Back off!" The word spirit of blessing and domination was the incarnation of the hero, the power of the youth. Therefore, under this order, when the rolling waves surged in front of Welslana, they suddenly separated on their own. It was as if there was an invisible barrier separating the seawater, so that the space within 2 meters of Welslana was like a vacuum, not being submerged by the seawater. "So you have such a guardian beast?" Welslana looked strangely at Bio, who was entangled with Mekar. It seemed that the fight between Bio and Mekar had ignited his desire to fight. He looked at Noah with burning eyes. "Then should we begin?" Hearing this, Noah, who was floating in the air, silently lowered his body and pointed the knight's sword at Welslana. "Unlike Bio, I don't have the ability to transform. Let me use the sword in my hand to challenge you, the god of victory." "Sword." Welslana suddenly smiled. "Although I, who have 10 incarnations, rely on the power of transformation to be able to grasp victory in any battle. But no matter what, I once had the title of a hero. As the god of war, and the protector of the people, if you challenge me with a sword, how can I not show you my skills?" After saying that, Welslana reached out his hand, as if he was holding something, and stretched it straight to his side. "Sword, come to my hand." Under the word spirit of domination, on the beach, a burst of sand suddenly rose up, and gradually condensed into a sand sword in Welslana's hand. Holding the sand sword in his hand, an extremely domineering aura suddenly erupted from Welslana's body. This aura was so strong that it made Noah feel a little suffocated. With the huge amount of curse power that belonged to God gushing out from Welslana's body, the sand sword made of sand seemed to become more solid. It also burst out like a flash of cold light on the edge of the sword, which made Noah's heart tighten. Although he didn't directly face the sand sword, Noah didn't doubt that even if his knight's sword hit it with full force, there wouldn't be a single crack on the sand sword. Under the support of the word spirit of domination, and the huge amount of curse power from Welslana's incarnation, the sand sword became a true divine weapon in the sense of the word. This kind of skill could be called a divine skill. Sure enough, this was something that only God could do. No need to be polite." Welslana calmly smiled. "Show your bravery in front of me." Hearing this, the magic power that flowed in Noah's body like a surging lake also rolled up, making Noah's arm tremble. The knight's sword, in his hand, pointed diagonally to the ground, and an extremely huge amount of magic power lingered on it, bringing an invisible hot wind, causing the air around the sword to fluctuate. Then, looking up slowly, looking at Welslana, who was also possessed by the curse power, Noah's eyes flashed. "I won't be polite." After saying that, Noah's figure instantly turned into a blurry black shadow, and the faint sound of the engine driving echoed from the death feather form magician behind Noah. allowing Noah to charge forward with an imposing manner towards the motionless Welslana. During the burst, a magic line like electric wire spread out from Noah's body, covering Noah's hand, and also covered the knight's sword and the death feather form of magician, bringing a wave of fluctuation. That was enhanced magic. With the enhanced magic strengthening, Noah's arm strength would increase. The knight's sword would also become sharper, and the death feather form of magician would burst out with more ferocious speed, directly increasing Noah's strength, slash, and speed. In addition to the rune of knight's sword and magician strengthening, Noah's slash and speed increased several times. The knight's sword, in his hand, cut through the air like a flash of black lightning, carrying a fierce wind that caused the space to fluctuate, and fiercely chopped down at the motionless Welslana in front of him. The strength of the force was so strong that even the air under the sword was expelled, bringing a low sonic boom that lingered in the ears. The strong wind pressure made the ancient Roman-like clothes on Welslana's body tightly stick to his skin, but the sculpture-like artistic face was not moved by the fierce knight's sword in the slightest. Looking at the knight's sword that was getting closer and closer, when the knight's sword was only half a meter away from his head, Welslana's feet moved very casually and gently. Swish! The pitch-black knight's sword suddenly fell and brushed past Welslana's shoulder. At this moment, Welslana suddenly raised the sand sword surrounded by a huge spell, slightly bent it, and suddenly stabbed in the direction of the knight's sword. Ding! The seemingly random sand sword accurately touched the knight's sword at the moment when it brushed past Welslana's shoulder. Clang! A powerful force burst out from the sand sword, and the knight's sword was pushed up, making Noah, who was holding the sword, exposed a big gap, and even his body lost its balance. Not bad. Welslana smiled calmly, his hand that was holding the sword slightly bent, and he lifted the sand sword that was surrounded by a huge amount of curse power. His arm shook, and the sand sword brought along a cold wind as it mercilessly pierced towards Noah's chest. But it's still not enough to challenge a god. Noah suddenly reacted in an instant. The light wings on his back suddenly shook, making Noah's body that lost its balance turn half a circle. Holding the knight's sword tightly, the surging magic quickly condensed on the sword and fiercely slashed out. Just in time, it collided with the sand sword that was thrusting violently. Clang! The pitch-black knight's sword and the sand sword suddenly collided fiercely, and a crisp sound of weapons clashing suddenly sounded at the point of contact, stirring up ripples that caused the atmosphere to fluctuate. Chapter 474. Clank! The collision between the knight's sword and the sand sword made a loud sound of weapons clashing reverberate in all directions like an echo, and it even caused a burst of sparks to fly in all directions. Under the push of the light wings behind him, Noah quickly retreated, leaving a series of afterimages in the air. He raised his head and looked at Welslana, who was still as motionless as a mountain, and frowned deeply. Welslana had 10 avatars. The 10 avatars had 10 different abilities, so Welslana could change his form and ability to fight under any circumstances, and lead the battle to his advantage. Just like Alusha, Welslana could use the most advantageous and useful avatars to restrain the enemy under the most suitable circumstances. But until now, other than using the avatar of Strong Wind at the beginning, Welslana had only used the avatar of Young Man to deal with Noah's battle. Even so, in a head-on collision, Welslana's strength still firmly suppressed Noah's. The battle situation was indeed quite unfavorable for Noah. However, Welslana seemed to still be observing Noah until now, as if he wanted to know how far Noah could go if he tried his best. In other words, Welslana was not serious at all. Although he was stimulated by Noah's pursuit of victory and accepted Noah's challenge as the god of victory, Welslana obviously did not treat Noah as a real opponent. He did not use the avatar's power, nor was he serious. It could not be said that Welslana saw through Noah, but Welslana had not made the judgment that he needed to use that level of power, and was just testing Noah's strength. This is good. The more careless you are with me, in the end, the more smoothly my plan can be carried out. Taking a deep breath of the slightly cool air, Noah stared at Welslana, who looked calm, and held the night sword in his hand. The magician in the form of Death Feather behind Noah's magician, and the rune magic runes lit up at the same time. Pung! The black light gushing out from the tip of the wings suddenly increased, explosively increasing the performance, generating a huge thrust, making Noah's body almost turn into a black line, sticking close to the ground, and exploding in the direction of Welslana. Welslana suddenly raised his eyebrows, and calmly raised the sand sword in his hand, facing Noah, and prepared to give Noah a head-on blow. However, in the next moment, a scene that surprised Welslana happened. Go! Noah's eyes and the knight in his hand suddenly, and the night sword suddenly, Noah, Noah. On the body of the dark night sword, the enhanced magic pattern, and the rune magic rune also lit up. With the help of the enhanced magic and the speed rune, the pitch-black night sword turned into a blurry shadow. It flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning, and with a faint whistling sound, it shot towards Welslana. Noah's sudden throwing attack made Welslana's eyes flash with a touch of surprise, but his face was still calm. Facing the sharp night sword that shot toward him, Welslana did not retreat, but instead, he raised the sand sword in his hand and slashed at the blurry shadow. At this moment, the night sword, that turned into a blurry shadow, suddenly disappeared. As if directly penetrating through space, the black night sword disappeared in an instant, and suddenly appeared in the fluctuation of space. However, when it appeared again, the black night sword had already arrived in front of Welslana, and it fiercely stabbed toward his chest. Welslana's pupils shrank, and his expression became serious. The extraordinary eyesight belonging to the gods allowed him to see the truth of this phenomenon. Did he shorten the distance? At this time, the sand sword in Welslana's hand had already slashed out, and he could not withdraw it. He did use his brain. The huge spell that was originally lingering on the sand sword instantly rushed to Welslana's other hand, and that hand was covered by a pale golden light. However, you can't defeat me with this kind of trick. After saying that, Welslana suddenly stretched out his hand, and directly grabbed the knight's sword, that shot toward him like lightning, and he directly grabbed the sharp blade of the knight's sword. Clang! When the sharp weapon suddenly came into contact with Welslana's hand, it actually caused a crisp sound that was like the sound of weapons colliding with each other. Welslana, who directly held the knight's sword, shook his hand heavily, and the force carried by the sword was dissolved by him, and he easily received Noah's surprise attack. And since Welslana knew that the knight's sword had the ability to control the distance, it meant that the same trick would no longer work. However, Noah was not shocked, but happy, and his eyes completely lit up. Want and plunder! Black Tea King! When the spell that released the true power of the knight's sword sounded, the knight's sword, that was directly held in Welslana's hand, shook, and a blue flame burst out like an explosion. Suddenly Welslana's face changed, because Welslana felt it. Although the flame on the knight's sword, that was burning with blue flames, did not bring any heat, the spell that was originally flowing very smoothly in his body suddenly became chaotic, and regardless of Welslana's control, it rolled up. Then at this moment, Welslana felt that something in his body flowed into the knight's sword, and was absorbed by the knight's sword. Welslana was shocked, and he reflexively let go of the knight's sword in his hand. The knight's sword, that was burning with blue flames, suddenly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already back in Noah's hand. Success! Feeling the power of the knight's sword, Noah fiercely controlled the death feather form of the magician to soar into the sky and shouted. Bio! Bio, who was dealing with Mekr, suddenly flashed his ferocious beast eyes. Roar! It was unknown how many times it had been hit by Mekl's club, but its huge body suddenly turned into a bright meteor. It circled in the air, and before Mekl could react, it fiercely hit Mekl's back. Bang! Along with a muffled sound, Mekr's huge body was directly knocked back, and fell in the direction of the beach. Needless to say, Welslana happened to be there. Welslana, who did not expect this to happen, was shocked, and then his body was buried by Mekker, who was like a heavy mountain. Boom! In the loud sound, Mekker's huge body fell on the beach, and the sand on the beach exploded in all directions like waves. Roar! Bio, who had turned into a meteor, flew above Makar and transformed back into his golden wolf form. His body swelled up again, becoming a few times bigger. Then, he fiercely landed on the ground, smashing into Makar's body. Bang! In the muffled sound of the impact, the heavy and powerful limbs suddenly fell on Mekker's body, and the bones in Mekker's body were unable to bear the weight. Damn golden beast! Mekker's angry roar resounded through the sky. At the same time, taking advantage of the moment when Bio restrained Mekker, Noah rushed to the sky and stopped in the sky above the uninhabited island. His body, like a gust of wind, surged with a huge magic explosion and swept out like an explosion. A burst of golden light, more dazzling than the golden wolf Bio's, suddenly rose from Noah's body. In the crisp sound of "Pa," Noah fiercely closed his palms, and a gorgeous magic array immediately spun out from his closed palms. The magic that turned into a dazzling golden light suddenly surged into the rotating magic array, and the brilliant magic array's hub fiercely lit up. The space around the uninhabited island shook. Bright pillars of light suddenly rose from all around the uninhabited island and rushed to the sky, surrounding the entire uninhabited island. Chapter 475. Wang. Along with the sound of space vibrating, a bright beam of light shot up into the sky, surrounding the uninhabited island and releasing a huge amount of magic. Mekker, who was temporarily suppressed by Bio, gripped Bio's neck. The muscles on his huge body bulged, and even his veins began to bulge. With a furious roar, he slowly pushed away Bio, who had used his body to suppress him, who was slowly suppressing him. Whoosh! At the same time, a gust of wind began to blow from behind Mekker's huge body. It passed through Mekker's huge body and drilled its way out. Needless to say, it was Welslana, who had used the strong wind incarnation. Although he was affected by Noah and Bio's surprise attack, Welslana naturally wouldn't die, just because of Mekker's attack. It was more likely that he didn't even suffer the slightest bit of damage. However, Noah didn't let Bio suddenly attack to use Mekker to attack Welslana. What Noah wanted to do was to wipe out Welslana and Mekkel in one fell swoop. Wang! Rich golden light bloomed from Noah's palms, and the beautiful magic formation, rotating in front of his palms, illuminating the sky of the uninhabited island. Noah yelled as he mobilized most of the magic power in his body, and let it flow into the magic array, like a flood that had been opened from a dam. Fairy sphere. Activate. The pillars of light surrounding the uninhabited island suddenly bloomed with a strong light. In the next instant, with the uninhabited island as the center, the pillars of light that rose into the sky suddenly scattered, turning into a layer of halo, forming a huge bright transparent sphere that surrounded the entire uninhabited island. Taking a closer look, the surface of this huge sphere had the image of a fairy with its wings spread out. What is this? The sudden change made Mekker, who was still wrestling with Bio, stunned. Is this the method you prepared for victory? Welslana, who had turned into a gust of wind and gradually drilled out of Mekker's huge body, let out a joyful shout. But warrior, unless it's an ancient god-killing spell, spells won't work on us. Ah, I know. Of course I know. Noah, who was floating in the air, suddenly swooped down. Therefore, this fairy sphere is not used to deal with you directly. It is only used to confine everything that happens next within it. Saying this, Noah swooped down in front of the huge sphere and put his hand on it. Fairy sphere and fairy tale were the last super spells of the three great spells, and were known as the absolute defense spell. It could condense the thoughts of all the guild members of fairy tale into powerful magic and create an invincible protective sphere. It had the ability to protect everything within its effective range, and could even freeze time within the effective range of the magic. In this world, there was naturally no such thing as a fairy tale guild members yearning to condense a powerful magic power. So, Noah used his own vast magic as a medium to replace the thoughts of the guild members of fairy tale, and activated the fairy sphere. But this way the ability to freeze time would not be effective. Activating this magic, Noah did not use it to protect Wells, Lana and Mecker, but to restrict everything that happened next to the sphere. This way, Noah could unscrupulously use a killing move that could even affect him. Bang! Without hesitation, Noah used all the magic in his body, and like a gust of wind, it exploded in all directions. Magic full release. Enduring the pain brought to his body after mobilizing the inhumanly huge magic power, Noah gritted his teeth and let out a low growl. Everything, shatter for me. At this moment, all the violent and vast magic belonging to Noah turned into a gorgeous white light, flowing into the huge sphere through Noah's hand. Of course, Noah did not use the shatter magic to shatter the huge sphere. Under Noah's control, the brilliant white light that was injected into the giant sphere not only did not affect the giant sphere itself, but also dyed the entire giant sphere pure white. Wong! In the next instant, the entire interior of the huge sphere was covered by a dazzling white light that soared up like a tide. Under the cover of that gorgeous white light, the space of the entire uninhabited island began to tremble. Clang! The rich light flickered and made a vibrating sound. The entire uninhabited island, which was covered by the brilliant white light, was suddenly completely split into pieces of extremely orderly cubes, including the trees, ground, mountains, and rivers on the uninhabited island. Immediately after, the entire uninhabited island suddenly exploded. Dong! Amidst the earth-shattering sound, the space inside the huge sphere underwent earth-shattering changes. The uninhabited island exploded and turned into fragments, instantly disappearing in the long river of history. Bang! Relying on his huge body to temporarily suppress Mecker, Beowulf's entire body was shattered under the full power of the shatter. Kacha. Even the space within the huge sphere started to crack. Under the effect of Noah's shatter, using all of his magic power, it was as if the space within the sphere was shattering like glass, shattering piece by piece. In other words, except for Wales, Lana and Mecker, who were immune to all spells, as the highest level gods, everything inside the huge sphere was shattered. Boom! The space that exploded directly turned into a bottomless black abyss, bringing with it gusts of turbulence that swept across the entire huge sphere. That was no ordinary atmospheric turbulence, but spatial turbulence. If an ordinary person were to touch it, they would be annihilated immediately. This spatial turbulence swept out like a storm, and when it came into contact with the huge sphere, it caused the huge sphere to tremble. Crack, crack. The entire huge sphere also began to crack under the sweeping of the spatial turbulence. Seeing this, Noah's expression changed and a hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He frantically poured the magic in his body into the huge sphere, desperately trying to maintain the existence of the fairy sphere. If it weren't for the huge sphere, Noah would definitely have died once he was swept out by the spatial turbulence. Within the range of the huge sphere, in the pitch-black space where everything had been destroyed, Velislana and Mecker let out a loud cry at the same time. Their bodies were directly swept into the turbulent space and dragged into the pitch-black space crack. Should it be said that they were indeed gods and myths? The spatial turbulence that ordinary people would be destroyed with a touch swept over the bodies of these two highest-level gods, but it did not bring them any harm. It only made them unable to control their bodies, as they were swept into the depths of the spatial crack. If this continued, even if these two gods did not die, they would be directly exiled into the depths of the infinite space and wander endlessly. But was it that easy? You want to deal with me, the king of the gods, with this level of power? Mecker roared. Don't be delusional. Human. After saying that, Mecker's huge body directly turned into a bolt of lightning, rushing out against the spatial turbulence. Ha 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 ha. Wales Lana also laughed loudly. This is the power you prepared for victory? A power that can even shatter space is indeed amazing. But this is not enough for me to taste the taste of defeat. After saying that, Wales Lana's body turned into a gust of wind, colliding with the surrounding spatial turbulence and slowly blowing outwards. Seeing that whales Lana and Mecher were using their magical powers to break through the spatial turbulence and break out, Noah's heart was filled with shock. Can't this deal with them? Should I say, as expected of a god? You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.